Chapter 990. Chen Lai didn't know what it was in Lu Ye's hand, but he felt an extremely dangerous aura from the ball-like object. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already arrived in front of Lu Yi, his spirit energy surging as he punched out. Although he was old, as a body cultivator, his strength couldn't be underestimated. He was confident that Lu Ye, a fifth-order true Lake Realm cultivator, couldn't block this punch. As he punched out, his other hand reached out to grab the ball-like object, intending to snatch it. A blade slashed through the air, but Chen Lai pushed his blood qi and spirit energy to protect himself, not dodging. It wasn't until the blade slashed down that Chen Lai realized that something was wrong. An irresistible force hit him from the front, causing his body to stiffen. The spirit energy and blood qi protecting his body was directly broken, and when he felt the pain, he was already flying backwards. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the head of the other Chen family elder who had rushed up with him fly high into the air. That was the seventh elder, a seventh-order true Lake Realm cultivator. In the true Lake Realm, a seventh-order true Lake Realm cultivator was definitely not weak, but he couldn't even block a single blade from Lu Ye. Moreover, that blade had first forced him back, then beheaded the seventh elder. Chen Lai felt a chill run down his spine as a huge sense of crisis arose in his heart. Then, a series of crackling sounds reached his ears. When he regained his footing and looked over again, he couldn't help but be startled. In front of the entrance of the guest hall, Lu Ye's position had been replaced by a 10-meter-tall scarlet figure. The figure's curves were smooth, and its body was angular from top to bottom, giving off an extremely weak impression. Under the scarlet figure, there were simple and profound patterns that ran from the face to the torso, spreading to the 7 limbs, forming an extremely wild totem. 2 dark red lights lit up in the eyes of the small figure, like 2 soul-stirring ghostly flames, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. Air waves visible to the naked eye emanated from the scarlet figure's feet and spread out with a loud bang. Along with it, an indescribable sense of oppression spread out. In an instant, all the cultivators without spirit energy were attracted to this scene as they stared in a daze. At the front of the crowd, Xiang Yinghuan, who was hiding in the dark, was even more dumbfounded. Just now, Lu Yi had been sent flying. Although I was standing there, I could see everything clearly. Lu Ye suddenly took out a ball the size of a baby's fist. Then, the ball gathered and turned into many small fragments that crawled toward me. In the blink of an eye, I had turned into a ferocious creature that was 80 feet tall. What was that? Even though Li Ba-Xian was the patriarch of an 8th-grade family, and his cultivation wasn't even at the 4th-order true Lake Realm, he was still shocked by this scene. Crescent armor? It was said that Lu Ye did not have any armor, and that kind of armor was simply unheard of. What scared me even more was that Lu Ye, who was wearing the armor, was holding a long saber that was about 18 meters long. The blade of the saber was like a bamboo joint, and there were no joints at every 1 foot of the saber. With the long saber in his hand, a ferocious aura spread out, as if an ancient ferocious beast had been born. At that moment, all the cultivators without spirit energy felt a chill in their hearts. Phew! There was a heavy exhalation, and air visible to the naked eye gushed out of the sharp edges of the crescent armor, turning into white mist. The long saber was held horizontally by his side, and he swung it heavily, as if he was driving away mosquitoes. A faint saber light flashed, and the figures of the young cultivators behind the Chen family instantly stiffened, including an elder named Chen Tianchue. Just a moment ago, I was squatting slightly, and the tip of the saber was facing upwards. Dragging the saber, I passed through these stiff cultivators. The strong wind that was stirred up blew those people's stiff bodies. Every once in a while, the lower half of everyone's body slid down, revealing the smooth incision on the upper half of their bodies. Blood gushed into the sky. A tiger in a flock of sheep. The majestic figure of the dragon throne, coupled with the exaggerated shape of the dragon spine saber, killed every cultivator with spirit energy with every flash of the saber. Everywhere it passed, there was a rain of blood. Kill me. An angry roar came from the front of the crowd. Only then did the young spiritual chi cultivators abruptly return to their senses, brazenly rushing towards this small figure in fear. The saber light surged, but no one fell. The person in front was not afraid at all. He stepped on the blood and corpses on the ground and desperately charged back. From a distance, the scene was both tragic and shocking. In the guest hall, the 7 people from the myriad Devil Ridge were dumbfounded at the sudden change. After that, some of us personally witnessed the might of the Dragon Throne. We thought that this trip would be more dangerous than auspicious, but who knew that the Chen family didn't have such a trump card? The Chen family charged out with the Dragon Throne, attracting the attention of 40% of the cultivators, and the pressure on our side was immediately reduced. Giant Armor and Xiao Xinghe stood at the entrance of the guest hall. The 2 of them formed a barrier with their sabers, blocking the scattered cultivators. Xiang Yinghuan and Feng Yuechan used their own methods to kill the enemies. Lin Yinxiu's figure appeared and disappeared, but every time she attacked, she was unable to kill them. With the 7 of them working together, they could protect themselves for now. The situation is right. The myriad Devil Ridge spoke and glanced at the Chen family. Since the beginning of the situation, nothing was right. Who would have thought that the spiritual power would suddenly be beneficial to them? At this moment, they felt that there was no harmony at all. Logically speaking, facing Xiang Ying, who was wearing the Dragon Throne, even a cultivator like Chen Tianxue would not be afraid. The so-called morale was like a tiger's vigor in a spurt of wind. Then, it would weaken and be exhausted. Xiang Ying had not lost so many people. Whoever was still alive, they would definitely be afraid. However, the spiritual power cultivators didn't seem to be afraid in the slightest. Following this order, even the most inconspicuous spiritual stream realm cultivators dared to approach Xiang Ying's side as if they had gone mad. It was as if they cared about their own lives. There were even some people who climbed down from the Dragon Throne's small figure and madly attacked the Dragon Throne, causing banging sounds to ring out. Although the Chen family killed slowly, they were still able to stop the cultivators with spiritual power. A moment ago, the Dragon Throne's small and slender figure could already be seen from where it was. The sea of people with spiritual power had already completely submerged the Dragon Throne. Just as the myriad Devil Ridge and the others were worried about the Chen family's safety, a heavy and deep voice suddenly came from the human mountain. Crescent Moon. As soon as the voice fell, a bit of blade light was released from the human mountain. Immediately after, a dense amount of blade light slashed out like a crescent moon. The sizzling sound was inaudible. The human mountain collapsed, and severed limbs and pieces of flesh flew everywhere. The Dragon Throne's figure that had been submerged reappeared. The scarlet figure was covered in wet blood, and it looked even dimmer. Lu Ye's head flew to the back of the guest hall and just happened to roll onto the foot of the giant armor. I stepped forward and stomped on it, causing it to explode. After breaking free, the Chen clan took a step forward and charged towards the crowd. Brandishing his dragon spine saber, he slashed through the waves. Not a single person dared to come within 100 feet of me. All of them fell like weeds. His speed was so slow that it was impossible to see his figure clearly in the hazy night. The only thing that could be seen was the 2 scarlet lights floating in his eye sockets, dragging out 2 scarlet light ribbons. In the blink of an eye, I was behind a middle-aged man. This person roared and took out a small hammer. Leaping up, he used the momentum of his fall to smash the Chen family's head. That hammer contained the full strength of the other party, so it could be said that its power was extremely weak. Facing such a hammer, Xiang Ying just raised his hand and caught the falling hammer. With a boom, the Dragon Throne's figure bent and her knees slightly bent, neutralizing the impact. Her small hand gripped the hammer tightly, and she dragged the other party behind her. Her other left hand, which was holding the dragon's spine blade, flipped over and smashed the other party's chest heavily with the hilt. With a crack, it seemed that many of the other party's ribs were broken. The middle-aged woman spat out a mouthful of blood, and her aura instantly weakened. The Chen family threw away the small hammer in my hand and raised his hand to grab my head, pulling me behind him. A cold voice came from the Dragon Throne. "What the hell is their Ling Qi doing?" That middle-aged woman was the head of the Ling Qi clan, Xiang Yinghuan. Just now, when I was hiding outside and giving orders, the Chen family had already seen through my position. In his perception, This person was the first Xiang Yinghuan left in the Lingqi clan. The other Xiang Yinghuan cultivators were either killed by me, or by the myriad Devil Ridge and Shaoxinghe. Even the surviving Lingqi clan cultivators were 80% of the original Lingqi clan. The Chen family didn't kill me because I felt that today's matter was too strange. Not only did the Lingqi clan inexplicably attack us in secret, they even gathered their entire clan to besiege us. I originally thought that the Lingqi clan was a chess piece placed by the true Lake Realm and wanted to use this opportunity to eliminate me. But after this small battle, I felt that it was too similar. That was because spiritual energy and the other cultivators were far too fearful of death. It was as if there was someone who didn't care about their own life and death. Even when I wore the dragon throne, I only managed to shock Xiang Ying and the other cultivators at the start. Before that, I didn't feel any fear at all. Even if the Lingqi clan was a spy placed by the true Lake Realm, it was only a small portion of them. It could be said that all of the Lingqi clan cultivators were in the true Lake Realm. If that was the case, the news would have been leaked long ago. So the Chen family wanted to understand why the Lingqi clan was so cowardly. Did we know that there would be no consequences for attacking the disciplinary hall? Since we wanted to kill Li Baxian, we naturally wanted to bring him back to Grand Sky City for interrogation. No matter what, we had to get to the bottom of today's matter. Otherwise, we would definitely encounter a similar attack the last time. As expected of the person I chose. Li Baxian suddenly spoke. What? The Chen family asked, but he didn't get any response. He only heard a loud bang from Li Baxian's head. Then, Li Baxian's neck tilted and he started breathing. I died just like that. Xiang Ying even knew how I died. Because I felt that Li Baxian didn't activate Qin Lai at all. Chi chi chi. Similar sounds came continuously from the side. Capture him alive. The Chen family shouted angrily and turned to grab a nearby Lingqi clan cultivator. But just as he grabbed him, he died on the spot. Corpses fell to the ground one by one. The surviving Lingqi clan cultivators all fell to the ground. The Chen family was dumbfounded. The Wan Mo Ridge people who survived the calamity were also dumbfounded. Chapter 991. Blood soared into the sky, and rivers of blood flowed. In the square outside the Chen family's guest hall, broken corpses could be seen everywhere, especially at the place where Lu Yi was surrounded and at the entrance of the guest hall. The corpses in these two places were piled up into small mountains. The Chen clan was a 6th-rank clan. Although there weren't many cultivators in the clan, there were still quite a number of them. During the battle, there were still a steady stream of cultivators rushing over from the direction of the Tianji Palace. All in all, there were at least several hundred cultivators. However, at this moment, these hundreds of people had lost their lives here. 70% of them died in the fierce battle, and the last 30% died mysteriously. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the moonlight tilted. Shaoxinghe and the others stepped out of the guest hall and looked at the hellish scene in front of them. They all felt a chill in their hearts. It wasn't that they hadn't seen dead people before, but the way the cultivators of the Qin family died was too strange. No one knew how they died. Moreover, in the battle, the fearless style of the Qin family members was also puzzling. The many figures that came one after another didn't feel like they were living people, but beasts that had lost their minds. There was a cracking sound, and everyone looked up. Under the moonlight, the 3-meter-tall figures suddenly collapsed, turning back into small fragments and turning back into a round ball the size of a baby's head. Lu Yi raised his hand and grabbed it. He landed lightly on the ground and staggered a little. Lin Yinxiu hurried forward to support him. Seeing his pale face, she asked with concern, "Captain, are you okay?" Chen Yinxiu shook his head. It's not a small problem, but it consumed a lot of energy. Using the Dragon Emperor's trump card consumes a lot of energy. Moreover, in the fierce battle, I also suffered some internal injuries. Ordinary attacks can't break through the Dragon Emperor's defense, so naturally, they can't do any damage to me. However, the shock from these attacks can't be resolved by the Dragon Emperor. It's fine if it happens once or twice, but it can't take it too much. Especially when I caught Shaoxinghe's first strike. I felt as if the bones in my hand had cracked from the impact of the hammer. That's why I didn't use the Dragon Emperor the next time I was forced into a corner by Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan might have a way to break through the defense of the Dragon Emperor, but she can't kill me. Take a rest. They will investigate the cause of death of these people. As Qinjia spoke, he sat down cross-legged and took out a small handful of spirit pills from his storage bag and stuffed them into his mouth. Then he held a spirit stone in each hand and activated the power of his talent tree to absorb them. Jinya couldn't quickly replenish her energy, but she needed to quickly recover the stamina and mental power she had expended while wearing the dragon throne. Chen Tianxue quietly stayed by my side to protect me. Jin Yamei and the others split into groups of 2 and investigated the cause of death of these people according to the Chen clan's instructions. Today's matter had a lot of confusing points, and there were not many things that made people want to understand. After a round of investigation, he didn't find anything useful. He only knew that the first batch of people who died, including Jin Yamei, seemed to have no strength to explode in their brains. Their brains exploded into a mass of paste, and they died instantly. While Xiang Donglu and the others were busy, the Chen family was pondering over Xiao Xinghe's words before he died. I heard those words so clearly. Perhaps it was because Xiao Xinghe didn't mention the time, but I vaguely heard something about someone he fancied. Who likes who? If it was me, who likes me? What did it have to do with Ling Qi's matter today? While thinking, the Chen family suddenly looked up into the sky and saw a streak of light quickly flying over. It landed behind him and revealed the figure of a middle-aged woman. The group immediately rushed to Jin Yamei's side and looked over cautiously. The Chen family slowly got up and pressed the mountain plate blade at his waist. The newcomer's gaze swept over. Seeing the tragic situation here, her eyes narrowed. Seeing the Chen family's vigilance, she picked up the guard token at her waist. You are the head of the law division, Jinya. Which team are they from? Only then did everyone understand that the reinforcements had arrived. Almost at the same time that Ling Qi's side took action, the Chen family instructed Jin Yamei to send a message for reinforcements. Chen Tianxue also successfully sent the message. Calculating the time, the other side hadn't been too slow. Judging from the Lu Yi waves that the other side displayed, that divine ocean realm cultivator was a Lin Yinxiu. Only without Lin Yinxiu would not be qualified to be the head of the law division. After confirming that the newcomer was one of their own, everyone relaxed. The main reason was that the Ling Qi had caused them to be overly cautious. After confirming the newcomer's identity, no one could guarantee whether the other party was good or evil. Even at this moment, everyone was still vigilant. 4th Squad of the Law Enforcement Hall. The Chen family greets the head of the Law Enforcement Hall. Jin Yamei showed her guard token and saluted. Jin Yamei glanced at me, then looked to the side. Those people, were they the ones who killed them? Some of them. What happened? Jin Yamei asked in a low voice. Although I came to rescue them after receiving the news, I didn't expect to see such a scene. From what I can sense, apart from some mortals living in the 10 young lords' residences, anyone without a cultivation base has already lost their lives. In one night, Jin Yamei's family was almost wiped out. The Mi Mountain spiritual force would also become history. The Chen family explained all the complicated things that happened after that. Jin Yamei frowned as she listened, because the Chen family's story had too many loopholes. Other things could be mentioned, but the part about why the Ling Qi family would tamper with the tea made sense. Jin Yamei and the others were from the law enforcement hall, so how could the Ling Qi family, an 8th rank family, know the consequences of doing that? Before the matter was exposed, it was even more reasonable for the family to besiege them. I didn't have much interaction with the Ling Qi family, but I knew about Xiao Xinghe. This person could become the head of the Ling Qi family, and he wasn't a 4th order true lake realm cultivator, so he was naturally a special person. How could such a person be so clear-headed? The Qin family spoke very slowly. After all, the matter wasn't simple, but there were too few things that made sense. After listening, the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator was silent for a long time, then he said, "The sect exterminating leaf, the name is false. It's true that hearing 100 times is the same as seeing once." The sect exterminating leaf title came from when the Chen family was still in the Spirit Stream battlefield. At that time, I had only destroyed the sects of these 10,000 demons Ridge forces. I had really done something like exterminating an entire sect, so that title wasn't an exaggeration. But today, it was finally confirmed. I hope what he said is true. The Spirit Sea Realm cultivator looked at the Chen family thoughtlessly. The Chen family didn't notice. Does this little one believe you? Jin Yamei said with a frown. Before they return to Grand Sky City, this little one hasn't made a decision yet, so it's not up to you to comment. You just received orders to come and rescue them. The Chen family was silent for a while, and didn't say anything more. There were too few suspicious points about today's matter, so it was no wonder that the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator had doubts. Since they are all unwell, then it's none of your business. They will clean up this place. The Spirit Sea Realm cultivator was talking, but suddenly he didn't notice something and looked up in a certain direction. Immediately, he frowned and flew up into the sky, flying in that direction. My sudden actions caused the Qin family and the others to be at a loss. No one knew what I had discovered. This direction. Is it the direction of the fog cliff? Feng Yuechan didn't think much of it. At that moment, there was suddenly no violent fluctuation of leaves coming from this direction. Jin Ya and the others all raised their heads to look in that direction, only to see that in the night sky, there was a burst of dazzling light that illuminated the horizon. Two similar auras were madly clashing against each other. I've met an enemy. Xiang Donglu frowned. One of the two people fighting here was obviously a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator who had just rushed over. As for who the other person was, there was no way to know. But judging from the aura of the two, one was obviously weaker and the other was slightly stronger. As for which one was weaker and which one was stronger, everyone could tell from such a long distance. Only the Chen family, who hadn't given birth to divine sense, had a thick layer of worry between their eyebrows. Because I sensed that the one with the stronger aura was Jin Yam. In other words, the person who was fighting with Jin Yamei was slightly stronger than me. How dare you! An angry shout came from the direction of the fog cliff, followed by an exclamation that stopped abruptly. The small battle was over. From the time Jin Yamei rushed over to fight with this unknown enemy, it had been more than 80 breaths. Jin Yamei's heart sank. She really understood what was going on tonight. All kinds of strange things happened one after another. Suddenly, I didn't feel like I was being pulled into a torrent. I had a premonition that nothing small was going to happen. A stream of light quickly flew over from the fog cliff, carrying the brilliant aura that belonged to a minor cultivator like Lin Yinxiu. Before this unknown Lin Yinxiu had finished dealing with the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, she was flying over. The Chen family and the others all felt their scalps tingle. They instantly got into a fighting stance. Although they knew that the minor cultivator might be a match for a minor cultivator like Lin Yinxiu, no one was willing to sit still and wait for death. Jin Yamei even took out the dragon throne. When I activated the dragon throne, the figure that was rushing over from the fog cliff flew over our heads. In that instant, the Chen family used all of his eyesight and vaguely saw an enchanting figure in the stream of light. It was a man. When the man flew over our heads, the Chen family clearly saw that you glanced up, but you didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. You just left like that. The instant our eyes met, the Chen family broke out in a cold sweat. Because at that moment, I vaguely saw a meaningful look flash through the man's eyes. 10 breaths ago, there was a long breath. Everyone who had survived before the calamity had a grave expression. Why did he kill you? Qin Tianxue asked. If the man had wanted to kill us, the team would have been able to block him. Even if the Chen family wore the dragon throne, it would have been fine. At that time, only if I didn't activate the golden body medallion would they be able to survive. As for the others, they would definitely die. Maybe it's dandruff. Jin Yamei looked at the saber in her hand and felt a sense of power in her heart. Although he was happy that he managed to keep his life, being looked down upon like that made him feel a little depressed. Let's go! The Chen family shouted and rushed towards the fog cliff. No matter what, I had to investigate the life and death of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. After all, I was here to help. Chapter 992. Soon, they arrived at the destination. There were not many traces of a great battle. The two divine ocean realm cultivators had fought in the air just now, so it was impossible to leave any traces. They looked around but couldn't find Xiang Donglu. Judging from the battle just now and the short scream at the end, Xiang Donglu had probably met with an accident. Now, they didn't know whether he was alive or not, and there was no trace of him. There was only one possibility. Lu Yi stood at the edge of the fog cliff and looked down. Without much hesitation, he said, "I'll go down and look for him." The environment of the fog cliff was treacherous. The thick fog not only blocked the detection of divine sense, but also mixed with a large amount of magnetic or dust. The lower they went, the more their spiritual power would be suppressed. If they really went down the fog cliff, it would be difficult for the cultivators to exert their power. It would be troublesome to come up. However, it was not impossible to come up. They could always climb up. "I'll go with you," Xiao Xinghe said. Lu Yi nodded and was about to flash out when he suddenly stopped. He frowned and listened carefully. "What's that sound?" Lin Yinxiu also noticed the abnormality. After all, her cultivation was the highest among the people present. It was just that she didn't have divine sense, so her perception was not as strong as Lu Ye's, so she discovered the clue later than him. Soon, the others also noticed the movement. There was a strange buzzing sound and rustling sounds coming from below the fog cliff, and it was getting closer and closer. "Something's coming up," Lu Yi shouted in a low voice. From these sounds, no matter what was coming up, there were very few of them. "Go in," Chen Yinxiu shouted and led the group forward. They only stopped when they were 1,000 feet away and looked back. The movement on the fog cliff was getting smaller and smaller, and the thick fog that shrouded the abyss also stopped rolling violently. Something the size of a human body flapped its wings and rushed out of the fog. Under the bright moonlight, a strange-shaped figure vaguely appeared in everyone's eyes. "Insect race," the Yunhe cultivator exclaimed. The thing that rushed out of the fog cliff was actually a mantis-shaped insect race. None of the cultivators of the 4 states were familiar with that kind of thing. After all, there were often insect swarms under the green-scale battlefield, and young cultivators had seen the scene of the insect race wreaking havoc. However, the Zerg behind him was much smaller and weaker than the one Jiao Sili had seen in the jade-scale battlefield. It was filled with an extremely ferocious aura. That insectoid was at least as strong as Jiao Sili. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. Jiao Sili's Zerg was naturally not enough to make everyone lose their composure, but everyone knew that Zergs always moved alone. They usually gathered in groups, forming a small army of insectoids. Since there were no insectoids, there was no insectoid nest. Thinking of the commotion they had just heard, everyone felt their hair stand on end. The thick fog continued to churn as insectoids surged out of the fog cliff. In the blink of an eye, the insectoids were everywhere. These insectoids were all different in appearance. They were not shaped like mantises spreading their wings, nor were they shaped like hyenas or 7-limbed crawlers. They also wore a layer of extremely thick bone armor, and there were no sharp barbs on their shoulders. The moonlight flickered with a cold light, and they were not like centipedes, whose 100 legs danced, and were as swift as flying. The first mantis insectoid to rush out of the fog had not discovered the Chen clan and the others, and it flapped its wings and flew towards us. A small number of insectoids of different appearances followed closely behind. The Yunhe cultivator's flying sword slashed out and directly cut the insectoid in half. As the sword light wreaked havoc, even fewer insectoids fell halfway. Feng Yuechan's technique was break, and she cooperated with Jiao Sili to kill the enemy. Even Yi, who had been hiding in Hu Po's body all this time, came out in a flash and activated the power of her technique. However, even though the 2 people and 1 spirit's techniques were ordinary, they were still unable to deal with the small number of insectoids that swarmed over. In a short while, the insectoids had charged close to us. The giant armor blocked our backs. The Chen clan, Xiao Xinghe, and the divine ocean cultivators stood on the left and right. Sword light flashed, and insectoids fell one after another. The Chen clan's expression was solemn. When I was in the jade-scale battlefield, I had experienced an insectoid tide, but the insectoids I encountered this time were much easier to deal with than the ones behind us. After all, they were things outside the Jiaoxi battlefield, and the strength they could unleash might be too weak. However, these insectoids were all comparable to Lin Yinxiu. If they were few in number, it would be troublesome to deal with them, but if they were few in number, it would be a disaster. The Chen clan really did not understand why there were so few insectoids on the fog cliff. Why were the insectoids not discovered in the future? The insectoids were highly intelligent, and they might have been hiding on the fog cliff all this time. The Chen clan recalled their mission. It was Nightingale who reported that there were no ferocious beasts here. Before we came, we had also killed a harmful spirit python, so we thought that the spirit python was the ferocious beast that Nightingale had discovered. However, they thought that it was. They thought that what Nightingale had discovered was not the spirit python, but the signs of the insectoids surging in the fog cliff. They did not have the time to think too much. The 8 people and 1 spirit fought fiercely with the insectoids for a while, and the Chen clan shouted, "Let's go!" If we continued to stay, we would probably be surrounded by the insectoids. In that short period of time, although the number of insectoids that died in the hands of the Chen clan was few, there was still a small army of insectoids in our field of vision. The Chen clan vaguely sensed that the insectoids that rushed out of the fog cliff did not have Lin Yinxiu, and there were no true lake realm cultivators. They sensed that there were no insectoids comparable to Li Baxian, but it was fine. I gave the order, and everyone immediately rushed into the sky, killing a bloody path through the encirclement of the young insectoids, and slowly escaped in a direction. The young insectoids in front of us chased closely, but they were all killed by Jiao Sili's flying sword. Divine Ocean Realm cultivators, send a message to the Law Division. Tell the head that there is no insectoid tide here. Also, the head of the Law Division, Xiang Donglu, has been killed by a male cultivator with an identity. We know if he is alive or dead. The Divine Ocean Realm cultivators accepted the order and hurriedly responded. Senior Sister Feng, send a message to Pill Heart Sect and ask us to send people to eliminate the insectoids. In the area thousands of miles away, Pill Heart Sect was not the weakest sect. Now that the insectoid tide suddenly broke out, the sects and families had no way to deal with it. Even an 8th rank clan like Jiao Si's was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in front of such an insectoid tide. Even if Team D4 did not eliminate Spirit Stream today, it would be difficult for them to survive. Pill Heart Sect was the only sect we could not rely on. If we could not send people over in time, we might not have a chance to stop the insectoid tide from spreading. Feng Yuechan hurriedly sent the message. While speaking, the Chen clan descended to somewhere above. Outside that area was the backyard of Spirit Stream. Later, when Chen Lai led Jiao Si and the others to retreat from Spirit Stream, they passed by that area. According to Chen Lai, that area was where the people of Spirit Stream who did not have the talent to cultivate lived. There were a lot of people, about 2,000 to 8,000 of them. Anyone in Spirit Stream who did not have the ability to cultivate was basically dead. Only the mortals who had never cultivated were left. Now that the insectoid tide suddenly broke out, if those mortals were to pay attention to it, they would definitely have a chance to survive. Although the Chen clan had just fought a small battle with Spirit Stream and almost wiped out their entire clan, it was Jiao Si who started it first. And now, I know why Spirit Stream did this. But to those mortals, the Chen clan had a way to reason with them. Flying to the backyard, the Chen clan shouted in a low voice, "The insectoid tide has broken out. If you want to live, quickly find a place to hide. The deeper you hide, the better. Slowly, slowly." Back in the rear courtyard of the Spirit Stream sect, there were many mortals who had never cultivated. Tonight, none of them were able to sleep well because there had been no more fighting in the main family. We all knew what had happened, and many of them were roused from their slumber. They gathered together to discuss the situation, hoping to find someone to go to the main family and check on the situation. Before they could come to a conclusion, the Chen clan's voice rang out from below. Although these mortals had never cultivated, they were still from Spirit Stream and knew a thing or two about the cultivation world. Naturally, they had heard about the insectoid tide. The Chen clan's voice was calm, and the spirit stream cultivators who had gathered together immediately panicked. Thankfully, there weren't any old men in charge, and they quickly scattered to find a place to hide. The Chen clan turned around and saw a dark cloud rising from the foggy cliff under the moonlight. The dark cloud was densely packed with the figures of the insectoid tribe. There were so many of them that they could not be counted. I didn't linger. Before the spirit stream cultivators could react, I turned and flew away, pulling out some explosive flame spirit stones from my bag of holding. Rumbling sounds were heard, accompanied by violent vibrations of the leaves. A small number of insectoids were attracted, and they chased after me. The insectoids were highly intelligent, but they were extremely sensitive to the vibrations of the leaves. The Chen clan had noticed this back in the Jade Scale battlefield. Jiao Si didn't dare to let the insectoids linger in the backyard of Spirit Stream, so he had to use that method to attract their attention and lure them away. As for whether or not there would be any side effects, Ling Shi and the other mortals would be the ones who would be able to survive at the very beginning. I would do my best and leave the rest to fate. Captain, Minister, I want you to protect yourselves first, the Divine Sea Cultivator suddenly said. Of course Jiao Si knew he had to protect himself. However, given the current situation, I had to attract the insectoids' attention first. What is the Pill Heart Sect's response? The Chen clan asked. Feng Yuechan hurriedly replied, the Pill Heart Sect hasn't sent anyone yet. Good. Chen Jia roared and continued to throw out exploding fire spirit rocks. The sound of explosions was accompanied by dense Lu Yi fluctuations. The zergs in front of him were like a tidal wave that chased after him. The Chen clan could sense the weak auras of the young masters in the swarm, and knew that these insectoids were comparable to Jiao Sili. Gather and spread out. The Chen clan grabbed Hoopa from his shoulder and threw it to the giant beetle. Then, he turned and flew in another direction. A pair of fiery red wings spread out on his back, and his speed increased sharply. The Chen clan! He exclaimed. Let's go! Xiao Xinghe shouted, and took the lead in another direction. The rumbling sounds gradually faded away. A moment later, everyone turned around and saw that there were only a few insectoids chasing after us. However, Jiao Si's insectoids were endless. Their hearts couldn't help but rise to their throats. Chapter 993. While flying, Lu Yi searched carefully. Such a large-scale insect tide could not be led to a place with many people, especially a city. Otherwise, there would be countless deaths and injuries. There were many mortals living in those cities. Soon, Lu Yi chose a plain as his target. It had a wide field of vision and there was no one around. It was a good place to encircle the insect tribe. He quickly sent a message to Feng Yuechan, asking her to pass on the message to Pill Heart Sect. At this moment, a gap opened in Pill Heart Sect's protective formation. Many cultivators turned into streams of light and flew out of the mountain gate. From afar, the streams of light were like stars chasing after the moon. It was a spectacular scene. Pill Heart Sect was a second-grade sect. It had a strong foundation and many disciples. After receiving Feng Yuechan's report and learning that there was an insect tide in their territory, they quickly took action. They also ordered the subordinate sects and families under their jurisdiction to cooperate. At the same time, the news of an insect tide on MT-Me spread rapidly through various channels. At first, some people could not believe it. After all, it was too sudden. No one knew if it was true or not. However, as time passed and confirmed through various channels, the cultivators who were still doubtful finally confirmed that there was indeed an insect tide. In an instant, many cultivators within 1,000 miles took action. At the back mountain of Pill Heart Sect, a figure stood quietly. If any Pill Heart Sect disciple was there, he would recognize that it was their deputy sect master, Yujiajia. Pill Heart Sect was a second-grade sect. Being able to become the deputy sect master, Yuguanjia's cultivation was naturally not weak. However, what was strange was that he looked uneasy at the moment. By the looks of it, he was obviously waiting for someone. Someone who could make an expert like him wait uneasily was definitely not an ordinary person. The mountain wind whistled. Yuguanjia's eyes were filled with reminiscence. Suddenly he sighed. Others might not know why there was an insect tied at the foot of Mtmi, but he knew immediately when he received the news. Something had begun. The appearance of the insect tide was just to attract the attention of the Elixir Heart sect. At the moment, the Elixir Heart sect only had the sect master and 3 other patriarchs who were in closed-door training all year round. All the other warriors in the Spirit Sea realm had left to eliminate the insect tide. It could be said that Pill Heart sect's defense was at its weakest. It was earlier than he had expected. Therefore, after arranging some trivial matters, he immediately came here and waited silently. Suddenly, a ripple appeared in front of Yu Guanjia, and as the ripple spread, a figure appeared in front of him like a ghost. Even though Yu Guanjia had been prepared for this, he was still slightly surprised. He sighed inwardly that this person's strength had grown even stronger. Before he had appeared, even he had not sensed it. The person's appearance could not be seen clearly because he was wearing a mask on his face. The mask was black and white, with each color occupying half of the face. However, where the black and white intersected, it gave people a feeling of harmony. It was indescribably strange. "High Lord." Yu Jiajia's heart trembled, and he respectfully bowed. If others saw this scene, they would be shocked. Yu Guanjia was the deputy sect leader of a second-grade sect. When the sect leader was in closed-door training all year round, he could almost be said to be in charge of the entire Pill Heart sect. His position was high and powerful. In the entire military province, only the sect leaders of the first-grade sects had a higher status than him. However, at that very moment, he was bowing respectfully to another person. Furthermore, his attitude was extremely respectful, and he was even addressing that person as exalted. "Long time no see. Your cultivation has improved again," the High Lord said lightly. "Thank you for your concern, High Lord." The High Lord raised his head and looked in a certain direction. "Is that person still in closed-door training?" He was asking about the sect leader of Pill Heart sect. Yu Guanjia replied, "It's been 8 years. He hasn't come out yet." The High Lord sneered. "He wants to break the shackles of the Divine Sea realm on his own? The old man is senile. The time isn't right. How can the shackles of the Divine Sea realm be so easy to break?" Yu Guanjia's expression changed. At their level of cultivation, what they were most concerned about was naturally the shackles of the Divine Sea realm. Every Divine Sea realm cultivator could feel that there was a path after the Divine Sea realm. However, so far, no one had found where that path was. Many people had been in closed-door training like that person, but they had gained nothing. Yu Guanjia had also tried to comprehend it, but he had also gained nothing. However, judging from the High Lord's words, he seemed to know something but did not dare to ask. The High Lord saw through his thoughts, so he said casually, "Don't think too much. You'll understand when the time is right." "Is she still here?" the High Lord asked again. "As per the High Lord's order, I didn't let her do anything today. Because of this, she threw a tantrum. However, as the vice-sect leader, I forced her to give the order." The High Lord chuckled. "Her daughter is right outside. Of course she cares." Feng Yuechan. Yu Guanjia's heart skipped a beat. He felt that the High Lord was indeed powerful. Nothing could be hidden from him. "I'm going to see her. It's time to take back some things," the High Lord said and walked in a direction. Yu Guanjia hurriedly cupped his fists. "Please don't hurt her, High Lord." The High Lord did not stop walking. Only a faint chuckle could be heard. "You're really devoted. It's been so many years. Her daughter is already a true Lake Realm cultivator. You still can't let go." Yu Guanjia's expression was bitter. He did not say anything. Some things were not so easy to let go. "Don't worry. I'm just here to take something. I won't hurt her." Hearing the High Lord's words, Yu Guanjia heaved a sigh of relief. The High Lord walked at a steady pace. At this time, 70% of the Pill Heart sect's manpower had been deployed. The originally lively sect had also quieted down. Along the way, no one noticed him. After walking for more than 2 hours, he finally reached the peak of a spiritual mountain. Looking at the familiar scenery, the High Lord's face revealed a look of reminiscence. Many years ago, he used to frequent this place. However, at that time, he did not come alone. Instead, he came with another person. At that time, he was the most trusted subordinate of that person whose name resounded throughout the land of the 9 prefectures. Decades passed in the blink of an eye. Things changed with the passage of time. He did not expect to come here again in such a manner. It made him sigh. There was a small courtyard at the top of Spirit Peak. It was quiet and elegant. Outside the courtyard was a courtyard surrounded by a fence. Small purple flowers climbed on top of the fence, draping a layer of purple over the fence. He immediately saw the figure of a woman sitting in the courtyard with a solemn expression. Looking at her current appearance, she seemed to be sending a message to someone. She must be sending a message to that girl, Yuechun. He didn't hide his figure and just walked straight ahead. The woman in the courtyard immediately looked up with a vigilant expression. The sudden appearance of such a person in the sect naturally alerted her. However, her expression soon turned to one of surprise and suspicion. She scrutinized the person from head to toe. Although the person was wearing a mask and his appearance could not be seen clearly, she recognized his figure at a glance. Astonishment filled her eyes, which then turned into disbelief. The High Lord walked into the courtyard and looked at her quietly. His face was covered and his expression could not be seen clearly. However, there seemed to be a smile in his eyes. Great Mountain. The woman's voice trembled. The High Lord raised his hand and took off his mask, revealing an ordinary face. He smiled at the woman and said, "Senior Sister Chiu, long time no see." In the entire Elixir Heart sect, there weren't many women with the surname Chiu. And the only one who could live here and was at the Divine Sea realm was Elder Chiu Min. Very few cultivators of this generation had heard of her name. This was because she had been living in seclusion for the past few decades. She had never left Pilheart sect. Even within Pilheart sect, her presence was extremely weak. Some disciples did not even know that their sect had such an elder. However, the older generation of cultivators were very familiar with her name. It was not that she had done anything shocking. The main thing was that she had once married an incredible man and had even given birth to a daughter for him. That man's name was Feng Wujiang. Chiu Min was Feng Wujiang's widow and Feng Yuechun's birth mother. After dozens of years, Chiu Min could not believe her eyes when she suddenly saw Tai Shan again. She stared blankly at the familiar face in front of her. Dozens of years had passed, but his appearance did not seem to have changed at all. Only his temperament had changed a little. He had become more reserved and more mysterious. She still remembered that Great Mountain was the most active of Feng Wujiang's brothers. He was also the one who worshipped Feng Wujiang the most. After a while, she said, "But aren't you already dead?" Great Mountain smiled. "Senior sister, you have never seen my corpse. How can you be sure that I'm dead?" "Your imprint has clearly dissipated." Chiu Min frowned. It was very simple to determine whether a person was dead or alive. If the imprint was still there, the person was alive. If the imprint was gone, the person was dead. Chiu Min naturally had Great Mountain's imprint. After all, they were very familiar with each other several decades ago. However, the imprint had already dissipated after the battle several decades ago. That was why she was certain that Great Mountain was dead. However, at this very moment, Great Mountain, who should have been dead for several decades, actually appeared in front of her alive. This gave her a huge psychological impact. In a flash, Chiu Min came to a realization. You erased your own battlefield imprint. Other than death, there was only one possibility for the imprint to disappear. The battlefield imprint had been erased. This kind of thing was very difficult to do. Even if a cultivator made some mistake and was expelled from the sect, they would only lose their identity as a disciple of the sect. The battlefield imprint would still remain. After all, it was a gift from the heavens. However, just because it was difficult to do, it did not mean that it was impossible. Especially when Great Mountain had followed Feng Wujiang for many years. Feng Wujiang had shown them many miraculous methods that were rarely seen by ordinary people. Senior sister is still so smart. Great Mountain smiled, admitting it. Senior sister, aren't you going to invite me to sit? Only then did Chiu Min come back to her senses. She hurriedly invited him. This place is still the same. It hasn't changed from before. Great Mountain turned to look around. As he spoke, he met Xiaomin's anxious gaze. Knowing what she was thinking, he slowly shook his head. Big brother Wujiang has indeed died in battle. I buried his body with my own hands. The hope in Xiaomin's eyes instantly disappeared. Chapter 994. On Spirit Peak, in the small courtyard, the light in Xiaomin's eyes dimmed again. Originally, when she saw Tai Shan come back from the dead, she still had some hope in her heart. She thought that Feng Wujiang was like Tai Shan, erasing his battlefield imprint and hiding somewhere all these years. But hope was just hope. Thinking about it, if he was really still alive, it was impossible for him to not show up for so many years, and it was even more impossible for him to not see her daughter. Feng Wujiang, after all, was dead long ago. All these years, where have you been? Xiaomin calmed herself down and asked. Walking around, I don't have a fixed residence, Tai Shan replied with a smile. Why did you fake your death? Were you hiding from someone? That's not it. Senior Sister Chiu, you don't have to think too much. It's just that there are some things that I didn't know back then. Only by jumping out can I see more clearly. Xiaomin frowned slightly. Tai Shan's words were unclear, and she didn't really understand. She increasingly felt that the Tai Shan in front of her was very different from the one in her memories. Then, you see clearly now? Tai Shan shook his head slowly. It's complicated and confusing, but I won't be as clueless as before. That's good. Xiaomin took the lead. The two chatted for a while more. Tai Shan said, Senior Sister Chiu, actually, I came this time to find you for something. Xiaomin looked at Tai Shan and smiled. Just say it. We've been friends for so many years. Why are you treating me like an outsider? Tai Shan stared into Tai Shan's eyes with a serious expression. You need something that little brother Yujiang left outside his place. Wu Ning looked at him, and a look of confusion flashed across his eyes. What is it? Their eyes met for a moment, and Lu Yi suddenly laughed. Young man, you're right. Senior Sister's temperament has changed. Tai Shan became more and more worried. What is he talking about? Lu Yi shook her head. Senior Sister, since you're here, you can naturally be sure that it's outside his place. Why do you have to deceive you? Tai Shan frowned and said, but little brother Yujiang did leave something outside your place. Lu Yi suddenly sighed. You know, I will give it to you. But you really know what he's talking about. Wu Ning had a helpless expression on his face. Senior Sister, why don't you take a look at this? Lu Yi suddenly changed the topic, took out an item, and handed it to Wu Ning. It was a moon reflection plate. When Tai Shan saw it, his face sank slightly. He vaguely realized something, and even his aura became slightly hotter. You raised your hand to take the moon reflection plate and poured your spirit power into it. In an instant, a scene of looking down from a low altitude appeared under the moon reflection plate. The moon reflection disc was a set of two. It couldn't be used to transmit images. One side of the moon reflection disc was used to reflect images, while the other side couldn't be used to see the scene here. Judging from the reflection of the moon reflection plate in his hand, it was clear that no one was holding the moon reflection plate in the air. The scene above the reflection was transmitted to the other side. The crafting of the moon reflection plate was not simple. Initially, when Wu Ning was returning to the Blue Blood Sect's encampment from the spiritual stream battlefield, she passed by the 100 Peak Mountain to participate in the Dragon's Spring meeting. The Green Feather Mountain, Supreme Luo Sect, and the 8 houses of the Qin clan had worked together to create a giant moon reflection plate to reflect the battle situation at the 100 Peak Mountain. Because this moon reflection plate was made with a smooth surface, it could not see the specific scene. It could only see the small distribution of the 8 powerhouses. Naturally, the moon reflection plate in Tai Shan's hand was of a much lower quality than the one at the 100 Peak Mountain. A scene was reflected in the moon reflection plate. It was a vast plain, and in the reflection, insects of all shapes and sizes were wreaking havoc everywhere. There were also figures of cultivators crisscrossing back and forth, killing the insects. Of course, Wu Ning knew that the young martial artists of the Pill Heart sect had rushed out to help when the insect tide suddenly broke out in Mushan. You had also contacted Feng Yuechan for a while and knew that you were fighting the enemy and killing insects on a plane with a few friends. Therefore, when Tai Shan saw the scene reflected in the moon reflection plate, he knew where it was. At that moment, the scene in the moon reflection plate turned and projected to a certain location on the plane. At that location, 8 figures appeared in the field of vision. They looked very lifeless. It was clear that they were a group of old people. Among the 8 people, 7 were women and 2 were men. The one standing at the back was very small. Even though it was just a reflection in the moon reflection plate, it gave people a feeling that it was an iron wall. It was as if as long as I stood outside, no one could break through my defense. Wu Ning's gaze fixed on the man standing in front of the small figure. He was using a technique to kill the enemy. That person is your man, Feng Yuechan. Tai Shan's aura suddenly became bone-chilling. She plucked a large purple flower and sniffed it. You remember that those flowers were personally transplanted by little brother Yujiang because I heard that he hated that kind of flower. Senior sister has taken good care of him. I turned around and smiled. Of course, senior sister will take even better care of this martial nephew of yours. Wu Ning clenched the moon reflection plate in his hand and calmed his mind. He said, "That insect tide has nothing to do with him? Are you a fool? If you could cultivate to the divine sea realm and live for dozens of years, how could you still be the same man who cherished knowledge?" Today's events were too coincidental. When the insect tide suddenly broke out in Mushan, a small number of people from the Pill Heart sect left the sect to deal with the insect tide. At that time, Lu Yi, who should have died dozens of years ago, came to the sect. You shouldn't think too much. What do you think, senior sister? Lu Yi answered with a question. It doesn't have anything to do with him. Tai Shan's heart sank. That was an unimaginable method. At least, as far as he knew, it wasn't humanly possible to trigger the insect tide. First of all, where would they get so few insectoids from? Wu Ningyu is one of his people. Shang Taishan didn't ask, but used in tone. Today, when you received Feng Yuechan's message, you wanted to go there in person. However, Feng Wujiang forced you to come. You were just wondering why Feng Wujiang did that. Now, you know that Lu Yi wanted to see you. So, you must stay in the Pill Heart sect. On Wu Ning's way, the sect didn't give any warning or activate any restrictions. I was able to reach the outside before I entered the human realm. Obviously, it didn't explain much. Senior Martial Sister Chiu, you only came here for this item. Lu Yi sighed again. I hope you can fulfill my wish, Senior Martial Sister. You know what he's talking about. Tai Shan pursed his red lips. A scene decades later appeared in his mind. Yu Guanjia had once handed something to you for safekeeping and told you that if no one came to you for that thing one day, you could hand it over no matter what, especially Wu Ning. Back then, Tai Shan knew why Yu Guanjia did not warn him repeatedly. After all, at that time, Wu Ning could not be considered the person Yu Guanjia relied on the most. Their brotherly relationship was deep, so Yu Guanjia had reason to not be on guard against Lu Yi. However, I warned him repeatedly. Moreover, it hadn't been several decades. Lu Yi had died several decades ago. You almost forgot about it. It wasn't until today that you saw Lu Yi and I said I wanted to take away the thing Yu Guanjia left outside that Tai Shan suddenly became vigilant. What exactly is this thing? Wu Ningyuan didn't warn you like that back then. Several decades later, Lu Yi really came to you for it. This thing has been in your possession for several decades. Naturally, you've played with it and comprehended it. However, this heart is a strange disc. You have no way of comprehending anything useless from it. Senior sister, you don't have much time, but he also has too little time. If you can get this thing in one incense stick, I'm afraid your martial nephew will have a bad time. He threatened you? Tai Shan glared at Wu Ning. He forgot that you're his little brother Youjiang's only flesh and blood. Of course you know. Lu Yi took the lead. So if it's not possible, you're absolutely willing to hurt you. However, for little brother Youjiang's unfinished business, any price is worth it. Wu Ningyuan's heart is dead. He said it to you personally. Yes, little brother Yujiang isn't dead yet. But the one who should die is me. The one who should die is that bastard world. Wu Ning's mood suddenly became less agitated. What does he want? Wu Ning slowly shook his head. You just want this thing. Take it and leave. Your subordinates don't have what he wants. You know where he heard the news from, but if he's mistaken, Lu Yi smiled slightly. Senior sister, you should think about it quickly. Tai Shan suddenly had a headache. Wu Ning had become too little. In the future, I was the most honest and the least scheming one in Yu Guanjia's hands. But when we met again decades ago, Wu Ning found that his heart completely recognized me. Perhaps he didn't know me in the first place. The only one who knew my true nature was Yu Guanjia. Otherwise, Wu Ningyuan would not have specially told you these words back then. Time passed quickly. Wu Ning stared at the reflection in the moon reflecting plate and muttered to herself. Lu Yi also urged her. She just sat at the side and waited silently. Under the moon reflecting plate's reflection on the plains, Chiu Min and the others worked together to kill the enemy. Later, I was alone and used the exploding fire spirit rock to create a small commotion, leading a small number of Zergs to the plains. Then, I immediately found a place to hide. When the Zergs lost sight of me, they became like headless flies. They acted against their instincts and devoured everything that had no vitality. In a short period of time, wherever the Zergs passed by, the plains that were originally full of vitality became dead silent. Fortunately, after a while, a small number of cultivators who heard the news rushed over from all directions. Among them, the Pill Heart sect had the fewest people. Even a small number of cultivators in the Divine Ocean realm came. The others in the group had already contacted Chiu Min. When they met up, they joined the small army to exterminate the Zergs. In the midst of the fierce battle, Wu Ning suddenly frowned. She moved to the front of Giant Beetle and quietly spread out her divine telekinesis to investigate in all directions. What's wrong? Nearby, Li Baxian, who was controlling his sword to kill the Zergs, asked. Nothing. Chiu Min shook her head. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she didn't feel like she was being watched. Chapter 995. Although the outbreak of the insect tide was sudden and the scale was huge, cultivators from all directions rushed over and quickly stabilized the situation. However, no one knew how many people would be affected this time. Most of the insects were lured to the plains by Lu Yi, but many of them were scattered. These scattered insects would definitely cause some impact to the villages and cities within 1,000 miles. As time passed, the number of insectoids decreased. The entire plain was filled with cultivators slaughtering the insectoids. The dead land was filled with insectoid corpses. Cultivators who received the news kept rushing over. Lu Ye's team was well organized. There were people from various sects, so their efficiency in killing the insects was not bad. Moreover, killing these insects actually gave them battle merits, which was a pleasant surprise. While the fierce battle was still going on, Lu Yi suddenly felt a sense of danger. When he looked up, he saw a figure rushing down from the sky. It was heading straight for them. A terrifying aura filled the air, and a huge pressure descended from the sky. It was a Divine Ocean realm cultivator. Lu Yi almost thought that this person was going to attack them. Fortunately, this unfamiliar Divine Ocean realm cultivator dodged when he was only 300 feet away from them. He landed on the side and punched out, shattering the head of an insect wrapped in bones that looked like a hyena. This insect was not weak. It was comparable to a true lake realm cultivator. Moreover, the bones on the surface of its body gave it a strong defense, so it took some effort to kill it. Lu Yi and the others had killed many insects of this type before, so they naturally had a deep understanding of this. Seeing this Divine Ocean realm cultivator rushing down from the sky single-handedly kill the surging insect tide, Dai Chi heaved a sigh of relief. At that moment, I really thought that the familiar Dai Qin would attack us. He frowned slightly, abandoned the distracting thoughts in his mind, and continued to cooperate with Xiao Xinghe and the others to kill the enemy. While this Divine Ocean realm cultivator was rushing down from the sky, in the courtyard of Pill Heart Sect's Spirit Peak, the Chen clan cultivator, who had been staring at the reflection plate and muttering to himself, sensed the rapid changes in the scene. He looked up and shouted, Tai Shan. Tai Shan sat still and smiled in response. Time's up, Senior Chiu. Give it to him, Mustang. Daichi said as he raised his hand and threw out an item. Tai-shan raised his hand and caught it. At that moment, the scene in the moon reflection plate changed again. The person holding the moon reflection plate suddenly changed direction. Feng Yuechan and the others appeared in the moon reflection plate. Chen Jia frowned and angrily said, "He tricked you." There were traces of contact with someone, not to mention the battlefield imprint. There was no way to contact anyone. But there was no moon reflecting disk here, and the head changed direction. In other words, Tai-shan had arranged it long ago. He was afraid that if he didn't hand over the item, Feng Yuechan wouldn't be safe either. Who knows? Tai-shan was obviously very satisfied after getting what he wanted. Personally speaking, you are absolutely not willing to hurt little brother Youjiang's flesh and blood. However, if no one blocks your path, you also know what you will do. Please forgive me, senior sister Chiyo. His tone was somewhat polite, but the threat was obvious. As I said that, I put away the palm-sized disc. What does he want to do? What is this disc? After a few days, senior sister Chiyo will naturally know what you want to do. That disc is a very important part. You can only say so much. Senior sister, please wait and see. Daichi didn't feel at ease. He only felt that nothing small would happen in the next few days. But Tai-shan thought of something. Senior sister, please make a heavenly secret oath that you won't reveal anything today to the 8th person. Chen Jia looked at me passionately. What if you do? Today's matter was too serious. Other than that, their vice sect leader actually didn't have anything to do with Tai-shan. How scary was that? Senior sister, why are you so stubborn? Tai-shan looked at her. Even if he calls Yuechan back to stay by his side, he might not be able to protect you. Senior sister will want to know what you are capable of. Chen Jia turned her head and said coldly, "Don't worry. You will definitely reveal what happened today." Senior sister, please make a heavenly secret oath. Tai-shan looked at her with a burning gaze. Chen Jia lowered her eyes. In the end, she made a heavenly secret oath in front of Tai-shan. You were willing to gamble with Feng Yuechan's safety. Even if Feng Yujiang told you to give the disc to Tai-shan, you still gave it to him. After all, Feng Yuechan is your and Feng Yujiang's only child. She is also your only hope in this world. When she opened her eyes again, there was no trace of Tai-shan behind her. She only heard a voice coming from somewhere, "Thank you Shiji for your help. When the day comes, Shiji will understand your painstaking effort." Tai-shan left. Chen Jia sat under the chair and didn't move for a long time. What happened today didn't shock even a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator like you. There wasn't much for you to understand. When there were no more footsteps, Chen Jia came back to her senses. She looked up and saw Yu Guanjia walking over. Get lost. Chen Jia looked at me passionately. Yu Guanjia's mouth moved as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't. He cupped his fists and turned to leave. After a few days of fierce fighting, the number of insects on the plain had decreased. The young cultivators gathered and spread out in all directions, looking for fish that had escaped the net. Qiumin's team was also doing the same thing, but they didn't find anything. There was no news, but the insect nest was found. It was in the deepest part of the misty cliff. No young cultivators at the Spirit Sea Realm came here, ready to enter the misty cliff and destroy the insect nest. However, in a place like the Misty Cliff, even Spirit Sea Realm cultivators wouldn't have much of an advantage if they went in. Therefore, without knowing the situation inside the Misty Cliff, the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators didn't dare to act rashly. Daichi led a group of people to Lu Ye's backyard. The reason I came over was to take a look at the situation of the people in Daichi's backyard. When the insect tide broke out, Daichi was the first to bear the brunt of it. The young mortals all hid under my warning, and I knew that many people had escaped. Looking around, the buildings that were originally disorderly were now in a mess. It should have been affected when the insect tide passed by. The ground was full of small patches of blood, and there were also a few blood-stained clothes. Obviously, it was fortunate that not many people were killed. There were still some scattered insects. There weren't many of them, and they were too weak. The team of 8 people gathered in groups of 2 to cut off the fish that had escaped the net and search for survivors. After a round of investigation, The result was both good and bad. Many people in Lu Ye's group died, but some of them didn't escape. Those people were slow to react. Before Dai Chi finished shouting, they had already found a place to hide. They were lucky to survive. Chiu Min's mood wasn't light at all. When I killed Lu Yi and the other cultivators, I didn't go easy on them. I didn't hold back at all. After all, they were enemies. It was he who died and not you who died. There wasn't the slightest bit of mercy to speak of. But what Dai Chi's cultivators did was ultimately related to those mortals. After a calamity, there were 700 people in Lu Ye's group who were still alive. It was possible to restore the family's glory. Before this, the best ending was not to live a peaceful life. The battlefield imprint didn't send any messages. Dai Chi looked up to check. After a while, I looked up and said, "Let's go. Minister, this one wants you to return to Grand Sky City and report the details of this incident." That time, we were only here to complete a mission. In the end, so many things happened that we were caught off guard. The insect swarm was related to us, but the extermination of Lu Ye's family was caused by Team D4. An 8th rank family was destroyed just like that. Whether it was a small matter or a big one, even if Lu Ye's side was the first to act, they still had to give their subordinates an explanation. Chiu Min also wanted to know why Lu Yi did this. With my own strength, I couldn't find any useless clues. I could only rely on the Law Division. Perhaps the Law Division would know something. As for the Misty Cliff insect nest, it was related to us. Naturally, there was no Divine Sea Realm cultivator to deal with it. Saying that, just as she was about to take out a large group of spirit boats, Chiu Min suddenly turned her head to look to the side. In an instant, her hair stood on end. This was because in this direction, under a broken roof, there was an enchanting figure that had disappeared without anyone noticing. No one knew when you came. You seemed to have been standing outside, quietly watching everyone. The man's figure was extremely enchanting, and his clothes were also extremely revealing, causing one's blood to boil. Just by standing outside, his entire body was emitting an extremely seductive aura, causing one to shift their gaze away. Below his face was a mask, allowing one to see his face clearly. But Chiu Min still recognized that man as the one who flew over our heads the night after Houyi. Xiang Donglu was also killed by this man. What made Dai Chi even more surprised was that I had seen the mask this man was wearing before. It was this kind of pure white mask with no red or blue ribbons on the right and left cheeks. I had interacted with people wearing that kind of mask twice. The first time was in the Cloud River battlefield. When I was being chased, no one was wearing that kind of mask. A man suspected to be in True Lake Realm helped me. A few months later, on my way back to Grand Sky City from Ash Flame Mountain Pass to be promoted, I met a woman wearing that kind of mask. I fought with her and beat her away. That was the 8th time. Although we didn't have much contact, it was impossible to say that those people were in the same group. They belonged to an extremely mysterious organization, so they had no idea why they came to contact me. Chiu Min was very willing to have anything to do with that kind of person. I often wore that kind of mask myself, so I naturally knew the character of that kind of person. Those who hid their head and showed their tail were never good people. The moment the sun and the sun met, Chiu Min's heart skipped a beat, feeling her core. She shouted, "Jog." When she said this, she sprinted over. I was wondering why this man suddenly appeared outside. For you to appear here at that time, it was obvious that you came with good intentions. Chapter 996. Perhaps to silence him? After all, after this woman killed Xiang Donglu the night before, when she flew over the Chun family, Lu Ye's eyes had met hers for a moment. In the midst of the attack, Lu Yi was about to summon the dragon throne when a fragrant wind blew over. Then, the woman appeared in front of him like a ghost. She gently raised her palm and pressed it toward him. At this moment, Lu Ye's hair stood on end. Before he could see what happened, the slender palm pressed against his chest. Lu Ye's body suddenly froze. He felt his spiritual power dissipate, and he couldn't muster any strength at all. The difference was too great. This woman was definitely not an ordinary Divine Sea Realm cultivator. She was even stronger than Lu Yueme, whom Lu Yi had met that day. Xiang Donglu was also in the Divine Sea realm, but he couldn't even last 30 breaths under this woman's attack. How could her strength be weak? Hoopa, who was crouching on Lu Ye's shoulder, roared. His demonic essence surged as he revealed his true form. He opened his bloody mouth and bit toward the woman. However, the woman just chuckled. Go away. Her voice was soft, causing ripples in people's hearts. With a wave of her hand, Hoopa flew out. Giant Armor and Xiao Xinghe flew out together with him. The two of them reacted extremely quickly. They reacted the moment Lu Yi shouted, but they didn't run. Instead, they rushed over with Lu Yi. Now they were unlucky together. With a clang, flying swords covered the sky and covered the earth. Flying swords were naturally Li Baxian's means. After the flying swords, Feng Yuechan didn't cast any spells. The two of them had been cultivating together since a long time ago, and their hearts were no longer as one. In terms of coordination, even cultivators who were several levels stronger than them would have to deal with it. However, the difference in their cultivation was too small. Facing the flying swords and spells, the man didn't even look at them. He just blew out a heavy breath from his mouth. This breath turned into a pink mist. The flying swords and spells were knocked back into the pink mist, and their power instantly dissipated. Fog pervaded the air, enveloping the area where everyone was, causing everyone to feel dizzy and disoriented. Lai Yejia didn't know when he had reached this man's side, or if he was waiting for him to launch a surprise attack, but he was already enveloped by the pink mist. His figure staggered and revealed himself. A hasty stab didn't pose any threat at all. A bunch of boring big guys. The man's firm voice sounded again. He grabbed Ling Qi's arm and flew into the sky. He left in a flash. Giant Armor and the warriors at the Divine Sea realm stood up awkwardly, but they were also affected by the pink mist and felt dizzy. After a while, Xiao Xinghe exclaimed, Yes, the captain has been taken away. Your cultivation is the lowest, so your recovery is also the slowest. Although you are affected by the pink mist, this man clearly doesn't have the intention to kill us. He's just giving us a temporary way to move. Send the message. The Divine Sea Realm warrior gritted his teeth and shouted. Lai Yejia seemed to have woken up from a dream and hurriedly sent out a message. A moment ago, the pink mist dispersed, and everyone sat down to adjust their breathing. They quickly recovered, and when they recalled the scene from before, they were all shocked. Who is this person? Li Baxian asked. Why did you capture eldest junior brother? The Divine Sea Realm warrior shook his head. I know. After a pause, he said, For the time being, eldest junior brother's life isn't in danger. If this man really wanted to kill someone, one of them could escape. The difference in strength was obvious. However, he didn't kill anyone in the group, but just captured Ling Qi and left. He obviously didn't have any ulterior motives. But Lai Yejia was captured. Even if his life wasn't in danger, the situation was still optimistic. Who knew what this man was going to do to Ling Qi? At the same time, in the law department's small hall in Grand Sky City, Qian Yudang received Lai Yejia's message. His expression changed. I just ordered Ling Qi to lead the team back to Grand Sky City to report, but in the blink of an eye, Ling Qi was captured by a mysterious man. What's going on? Too few things happened in the past few days. The Chen family suddenly had this kind of thing happen. Lai Yi led the team to kill all the cultivators, followed by the outbreak of the insect tide on the fog cliff, and now the mysterious man suddenly made a move to capture the spiritual power. All these unforeseen events made it difficult for people to react. Looking at all the changes in the past few days, the Chen family was suspected to be the source. It could even be said that the fog cliff was under the Chen family's jurisdiction. Qian Yuding faintly felt that there was a small, tangible hand pushing something in front of the curtain. The Chen family was just a chess piece placed on the surface. There were many things I could see behind the scenes. After a moment of thought, I immediately sent a message to Tang Yifeng. No matter what, I still had to inform the headmaster that Ling Qi was captured. When the headmaster received the message, he was in the middle of a meeting with the elders. A group of old men and women were making a racket. They were just short of rolling up their sleeves and fighting. The situation was chaotic. Before receiving the message, the headmaster immediately stood up. A moment later, a figure rushed out of Grand Sky City and headed in the direction of the Chen family. At the same time, a strong wind blew in the air and the scenery above quickly changed. Lai Yejia frowned and felt that the situation was becoming more and more confusing. I think I understand why that mysterious man wanted to capture me. I originally thought that he wanted to kill me to silence me, but now it seems too likely. If he really wanted to kill me to silence me, he wouldn't have been able to do it. So he didn't want to kill me. Understanding this, Lai Yejia relaxed. Since he wanted to kill me, my temporary life is in danger. As for why he wanted to capture me, Lai Yejia understood. Lai Yejia could feel that the other party didn't seem to have any intention of winning me over. But if they wanted to win me over, why did they want to capture me? Ling Qi really didn't want to have anything to do with that kind of organization, so when he came into contact with the people of that organization for the 7th time, he was determined to fight with the other party. It was also a way to express his attitude and position. But now, it seems that I had to avoid some things in the end. At this moment, I'm being carried by this man's hand and slowly flying away. I resisted, mainly because I resisted. Just now, this man pressed his palm on my chest, causing the Lu Yi in my body to become chaotic. I still haven't calmed down yet. He can escape, Lai Yejia suddenly said. If they knew that he was captured like that, it might be more bad luck than good luck. But in the surrounding area, the Shaolin cultivators' voices and sleeves were all present. The brigade would definitely know and send out the news. If the law department also knew and took action, without the law department taking the lead, the Laoi cultivators in the distance would be able to quickly mobilize. Although the mysterious man's strength was weak, if he wanted to take him away in that kind of situation, it would be wishful thinking. So Ling Qi didn't panic at all. What if you escape? The man replied. His voice was still so firm, like a lover whispering in my ear. That's because he's weak. Ling Qi wanted to say something, mainly to gather your energy. How about you make a bet? If you can escape, you cut his tongue. If you escape, we'll die together. How about it? Ling Qi hurriedly shut up. No matter what, I don't have anything good to do. That bet is fine. This man is really vicious. The man chuckled loudly. How did you say something? At that moment, a figure slowly swept over from behind. Before it even got close, it shouted, "Let him go! Reinforcements are here." Ling Qi was delighted. Although he recognized that Lin Yinxiu, if she had received the news and came to intercept this man, he immediately secretly urged his Lai Yejia, waiting for their hands to meet to launch a sneak attack on that vicious woman. He wanted to do something to her. He wanted to give her less trouble and increase his chances of escaping. But who knew that the mysterious man was already on guard against me? Ling Qi had just pushed his Lu Yi when he felt a weak power surge out from the man's palm. The fierce power poured into his body, scattering the Lu Yi he had spent so much effort to condense. With a muffled groan, he urged his Lu Yi again. Facing this intercepting Lin Yinxiu, the mysterious man didn't have any intention of dodging. Just like that, he met her head-on. Their auras and Lu Yi were released, and there was no divine sense surging. Ling Qi couldn't see how the two of them fought. He only knew that the moment the two figures crossed, there was no muffled groan. Then Lin Yinxiu, who had come to intercept him, fell down. The man's figure only paused for a moment before continuing to rush back. This person was this man's opponent. And the gap between them was very small. If this man was given enough time, he wouldn't even be able to kill this person. Ling Qi's heart went cold. Along the way, there were many Lin Yinxiu who rushed over to intercept the mysterious man. They were all casually dealt with by you. This made Ling Qi realize how terrifying this man's strength was. The weaker you appeared, the lighter Ling Qi's mood became. Only when a brilliant aura rushed over from the direction of Grand Sky City did Ling Qi's expression turn happy. Because I sensed that the aura belonged to the sect leader. A troublesome fellow has come. The mysterious man clearly sensed that the sect leader was weak. He turned his head and glanced over, his expression serious. Your sect leader is here. Let you go quickly. Otherwise, I'll make sure he dies here, Lai Yi said fiercely. It's Tang Yifeng. The man suddenly realized. I can afford to offend him. As you said that, your body suddenly fell down. In the distance, the sect leader's eyes were like torches. He shouted gently, "Who cares who he is? If he dares to hurt your sect's disciples, I'll tear him to pieces even if he's at the ends of the earth." His voice was supported by Lai Yi and spread hundreds of miles away. His anger burned fiercely. In front of the sect leader, wind and clouds gathered as if a god had descended. The man brought Lai Yi and landed behind a cave. He turned around and looked at the headmaster, who came with a weak aura. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Elder Tang. This big man is only borrowing his disciple for a period of time. It will definitely be beneficial to me. I ask for Elder Tang's concern." As he said that, he lifted Ling Qi's collar and turned to retreat into the cave. Nearby, when Tang Yifeng saw this scene, his speed slowed down a bit. In the cave, Ling Qi turned his head to look at his surroundings. He suddenly had a bad premonition. Sure enough, as the leaves around the man surged, complicated patterns lit up in the cave. In the blink of an eye, a small formation was activated. In the area covered by the small formation, the void distorted. Transportation formation. Ling Qi's heart sank to the bottom. Chapter 997. Before the sect leader arrived, he saw the space near the cave suddenly distort and then return to normal. In the perception of his divine sense, the mysterious woman and Lu Ye's aura disappeared without a trace at this moment. Teleportation formation. The sect leader was experienced and knowledgeable and could tell at a glance what had happened in the cave. Clearly, a teleportation formation had been activated. Unwilling to give up, he dove down into the cave. However, there was no trace of Lu Yi. Even the teleportation portal that had been set up here at some point in time had been destroyed. Clearly, they were afraid that someone would use this formation to track their whereabouts. Without stopping, the sect leader quickly walked out of the cave and stood at the entrance with a cold expression. After a moment of thought, he sent a message to Qian Wudong, "Find a way to get a tracking plate. This old man wants to use it." Now, if he wanted to track Lu Ye's whereabouts, he could only use the tracking plate. Although it was rare, the Army State Guard would definitely have a stockpile of it. With Qian Wudong's status as the head of the law department and the sect leader's current status as an elder of the elder group, it was naturally no problem to get a tracking plate. When the teleportation formation in the cave was activated, Lu Yi felt his entire body falling into a bottomless abyss, which was extremely uncomfortable. Especially at this moment, the spiritual power in his body was scattered and difficult to condense, which made it even more difficult. He thought to himself that it wasn't that the teleportation formation he had set up had this problem, but that the teleportation formation itself had this flaw. The scale of this teleportation formation was larger than the ones he had set up before, so the teleportation distance must be further. As for how far it could teleport, it was difficult to estimate. This was an opportunity. If he was uncomfortable, the mysterious woman would be uncomfortable as well. Perhaps he could try to sneak attack her the moment the teleportation ended. Thinking of this, Lu Yi hurriedly condensed his scattered spiritual power. Time passed extremely slowly at this moment. Suddenly, the feeling of weightlessness from falling into the bottomless abyss disappeared and he stepped on something solid. Lu Yi immediately turned his head and saw that the mysterious woman was right beside him. Her body was swaying slightly as if she was drunk. Under their feet, a large formation hummed, and lines of runes bloomed with dazzling light. Lu Yi desperately urged the little bit of spiritual power he had condensed, and the mountain blade was suddenly unsheathed, stabbing straight at the woman's slender neck. The power of this strike was less than half of his usual power, but it was his full power at this moment. The long saber stopped. The tip of the saber was only an inch away from piercing the woman's neck. Under the mask, the mysterious woman's lips curled up slightly as if she was mocking him. Two jade fingers clamped down on the mountain pan saber, and no matter how much force Lu Yi exerted, she couldn't move an inch. "Little fellow, you're misbehaving. You should be punished," the woman said coquettishly. Her other hand slowly reached out, her thumb and middle finger interlocked, and under Lu Ye's gaze, she gently flicked his forehead. Boom Lu Yi, on the other hand, felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. His whole body flew to the side of the cliff and slammed into it. Rubble rustled down. Lu Yi maintained his posture and slowly slid down the rock wall. He only felt a buzzing sound in his head and couldn't see anything for a while. After a long while, he slowly came back to his senses and looked up. The mysterious woman's enchanting figure was standing in front of him. She had already taken off her mask, and there was a smile on her face as she looked at him meaningfully. It was undeniable that this woman was extremely charming, and with her enchanting figure, she was definitely a stunner that all men yearned for even in their dreams. But looking at her smile right now, Lu Yi felt as if she were a poisonous snake. Under the woman's gaze, he silently stood up and sheathed the mountain pan saber. Raising his hand, he said, "Let's go." As he spoke, he shook his head. The dizziness still hadn't dissipated. The teleportation formation's influence was one thing, but the other was the fact that he had been flicked in the head. The woman was startled. "Where are we going?" "Where are you taking me?" asked Lu. The woman stared at him in a daze for a while before smiling. "So you've already accepted your fate. Wasn't that strike just now quite fierce?" Lu Ye's forehead was throbbing. That wasn't an illusion, but rather a large bruise. People have no choice but to lower their heads under the eaves. What's the point of being fierce? If I can't beat you, then I can't beat you. The woman's eyes narrowed, emitting a dangerous light. "You're so flexible. I don't think keeping you alive is a wise move. Right now, you must be thinking that it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. What do you want?" Lu Yi frowned. The woman said leisurely, "Maybe it's better to just kill you right here. If you wanted to kill me, you would have done it long ago. Why go through so much trouble?" Lu Yi snorted. "Besides, if you really killed me, would you be able to justify it?" As soon as he said that, the smile on the woman's face slowly disappeared. Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. As expected, there was someone behind this woman. What he said just now was just a casual test. The way he saw it, that mysterious organization had contacted him twice with the intention of drawing him to their side. Since it was an organization, it wouldn't be the woman who said it alone. Under such circumstances, the woman might have been under someone's orders to kidnap him. But this was just his own guess. After a casual test, he found that it was similar to what he thought. However, such a mysterious organization had the ability to forcibly kidnap him under the watchful eyes of so many Spirit Sea Realm Masters. What did they see in him? His cultivation had indeed improved rapidly, but right now he was only a true Lake Fifth Order cultivator, so what could he accomplish? Or perhaps they really did see his potential and wanted to take advantage of him while he was still a fledgling to control him. Lu Ye's mind was filled with all sorts of distracting thoughts, but before he could react, the woman flicked his forehead again. But this time, the other party obviously didn't use any strength, only lightly flicking his forehead. "Don't be so smart, smart people die early," the woman said meaningfully before turning around and walking out. "Come with me, the Jia family's temple master will definitely catch up, so you'd better not make any unnecessary movements, otherwise I'll tie you up and make you look bad." Lu Yi clutched his head, a look of humiliation on his face as he swore in his heart that sooner or later he would return these 2 slaps 10 times, 100 times over, so he quickly followed the woman's figure. With the woman's warning, Lu Yi really didn't dare to make any unnecessary movements. What's more, he could clearly perceive that although the woman's back was facing him, there was a wisp of her divine sense lingering around him. If he made any abnormal movements, it would inevitably be noticed by the woman. This place was also a cave with a transmission array that was connected to the previous one. Before leaving, the woman destroyed the transmission array here. Walking out of the cave, she wrapped Lu Yi in her spirit chi and flew up into the air. After flying for a while, she descended again and brought Lu Yi into another cave, where they left through the transmission array here. Along the way, they passed through 4 transmission arrays, and in the end, Lu Yi didn't even know where he was or whether he was still in the War Province. He wanted to investigate his whereabouts, but if he really did so, it would definitely not end well, so he could only give up. Judging from his experience along the way, the other party's operation this time was extremely meticulous, and the several large-scale transmission arrays were the best proof. Lu Yi even had a feeling that the other party's meticulous arrangements were to capture him. With so many transmission arrays, no one could catch up to them. After the last transmission, the mysterious woman destroyed the transmission array as usual and brought Lu Yi to a waterfall. She flew up, passed through the waterfall, and arrived at a karst cave behind the waterfall. "Stay here and don't move," the woman ordered. Then she walked to the side and raised her hand to press the void. Lu Yi looked up, not knowing what she was doing, but he soon showed a look of surprise. Because when the woman pressed her hand, a circle of ripples suddenly spread out, and as the ripples spread, the void in front of her gradually began to distort. In less than 10 breaths of time, the distorted void opened an entrance to a passage. The entrance was in the shape of a vortex, and inside it was a void of nothingness, as if it could even swallow one's line of sight. Looking inside, one could see nothing but a dark hole. Secret realm. Lu Yi was shocked. There was an entrance to a secret realm here, and it seemed to be controlled by this mysterious woman. This made him think of the Wushuang continent. There were similar secret realms on the Wushuang continent, 3 of which were controlled by the human clan and 1 by the corpse clan. The 3 secret realms of the human clan had been drifting in the void, and the entrances were erratic, but the entrance to the secret realm of the corpse clan was fixed in one place. He just didn't expect that there would be a secret realm controlled by someone in the 9 states. "Go in." The woman opened the entrance to the secret realm and turned to Lu Yi. Lu Yi really didn't want to go in. Although his movements were restricted before, he was still in the 9 states. If he acted properly, he could still contact the sect leader or Gan Wudong and ask them to find a way to save him. But if he entered the secret realm, the situation would be completely different. The secret realm was another world, separated from the 9 states, and imprints couldn't be sent out. Lu Yi had been to many secret realms, so he naturally knew this. In other words, once he entered this secret realm, it would be difficult to contact the sect leader and the others. But at this moment he was on the chopping block, and it was not up to him. Seeing the woman's impatient expression and raising her hand to grab him, Lu Yi decisively stepped toward the entrance of the secret realm. His vision turned dark, and then light shone brightly. A fragrant wind lingered around him, and the mysterious woman walked in. Lu Yi looked back and saw a whirlpool at the entrance of the secret realm. Lu Yi thought for a moment and gave up on the idea of rushing back. The mysterious woman turned around and did the same thing as before to close the entrance. Only then did she stretch her body and grumble, "I'm exhausted." Her figure was extremely enchanting to begin with, and these movements caused her curves to seem even more soul-stirring. Lu Yi glared at her fiercely. He reached out and grabbed her breasts, rubbing them. Leather book. Address. Chapter 998. The mysterious woman obviously noticed Lu Ye's gaze, but she didn't care much. She just raised the corners of her mouth slightly. Lu Yi looked past her and saw a man in a black robe standing quietly not far away. He wasn't tall, but he was very sturdy. This person didn't move at all, standing with his hands down. The arrival of the woman and Lu Yi didn't attract much attention from him. He just glanced at them and then lowered his eyes, continuing to stand there quietly. Another divine sea realm cultivator, and an individual cultivator. Lu Yi was slightly shocked. However, this person gave Lu Yi a strange feeling. His expression was dull, and the light in his eyes was dim. He didn't look very smart. Lu Yi didn't know if it was an illusion. On the side, the mysterious woman stretched and then said to Lu Yi, "Let's go." She stepped forward, and Lu Yi could only follow. Almost at the same time when the mysterious woman took Lu Yi into this secret realm, somewhere in the military province, Tang Yifeng, who was flying rapidly in the sky, suddenly stopped. He was holding a tracing disc in his hand. The needle of the tracing disc had been pointing in the direction of Lu Yi, but just now, the needle suddenly spun rapidly and showed no signs of stopping at all. If the needle didn't stop, he couldn't accurately track Lu Ye's position. The sect leader frowned and stared at the tracing disc for a moment. He had a guess in his heart. Then he checked his battlefield imprint and found that Lu Ye's imprint was in a state of being uncontactable. He immediately understood that Lu Yi should have entered a sealed secret realm. That was why the tracing disc could track the whereabouts of the spiritual tattoos and why the imprint of the battlefield was in a state of connection. Fortunately, the imprint hadn't dissipated, which meant that Ling Wen's life was not in danger. He was relieved, but there was nothing he could do. On the other side, the people of Ding Si Brigade had also been trying to contact Ling Wen, but they didn't get any response. Until now, they had completely lost contact with Ling Wen. Bi burst into tears, and Feng Yuechan and Lin Yinxiu quickly comforted her. Xiao Xinghe and Li Baxin glanced at each other. Both of them were deeply worried and felt even more powerful. When Jia Rong was captured, we were at the side. But when facing a small cultivator like Lu Yueme, all our resistance was futile. We could only watch helplessly as Jia Rong was captured. Naturally, our hearts were filled with worry. Right now, the spirit runes know where they are and they are not safe. However, even if we want to save them, we don't have the means to do so. Let's return to Vast Sky City first and ask the sect master and I to come forward. Xiao Xinghe couldn't make a decision very slowly. In the current situation, the few of us don't have any solutions. The only thing we can't do is to ask Qian Yudang and Tang Yifeng to step in. That's why there's no possibility of saving the spirit inscriptions. That person just now was. In the famous secret realm, Ling Wen followed the mysterious man and tried to get some information. He was hoping that the man would say something to him, but the man still said, "He can't call me Dao 18. Dao 18? Ling Wen frowned. What kind of strange name was that? It was definitely just a name. What else could there be? However, the 18 types of women was a serial number. This was something worth thinking about. Without Dao 18, how could he not have Dao 1 or Dao 7? The man didn't want to explain too much to me. While walking to the back, he said, he used to live there. Someone restricted his freedom. He could do whatever he wanted. Do you understand? Ling Wen had a puzzled look on his face. He didn't capture you to imprison you? What enmity? No one wants to see him. The people in front of him? Ling Wen guessed. We'll just have to wait. The man said impatiently. At this moment, he walked to a wooden house by the lake and took a detour. Then he closed the door with a bang. Only a wisp of fragrance lingered at the tip of my nose. Ling Wen stood on the spot and muttered to himself. Then, he quickly turned around and headed to the secret realm's entrance. As expected, the man didn't have any intention of stopping me. Ling Wen soon arrived at the entrance. He glanced at Dao 18, who was standing outside like a door god. Open the entrance. You want to go out? The entrance of a secret realm required some ordinary methods to open. Jia Rong naturally knew how to open it. However, since Dao 18 was guarding outside, I knew that too. That person seemed to be too stupid. Ling Wen wanted to see if I could let him out. Although the possibility was small, how would he know if he could give it a try? Dao 18 quickly raised his eyes and looked at me with an expressionless face. He said in a hoarse voice, "Warrant." Ling Wen didn't have a warrant. He grabbed the warrant at his waist and waved it at Dao 18. Open the entrance. The warrant is a talisman. Dao 18's hoarse voice resounded. Then he lowered his eyes and stood there like a wooden pillar. The corner of Jia Rong's eyes twitched. Looking at his behavior and mannerisms, he didn't seem like a woman at all. Was that fellow a living person? Was he like Master's clone, a creation of Yenshur? But even her Master's doppelganger, which was called Big Butterfly, was much more agile than Dao 18. Dao 18 gave Jia Rong the impression that he was wooden and stiff. With or without the warrant, there was naturally a way for Dao 18 to open the secret realm. At the very least, he was sure that Dao 18 could really open the secret realm. Ling Wen turned to look at the mysterious man's wooden house. Then he ended his exploration of the secret realm. More than an hour ago, he had figured out the environment outside the Spirit Rune tutorial. It was a huge mystic realm. It was not much different from the Sword Instrument sect's mystic realm that he had visited previously. However, it was only half the size of the Sword Instrument sect's mystic realm. There was no sun or moon shining in the sky in the secret realm. There was no light, so it looked like a cloudy day. The border of the secret realm was empty. Just looking at it gave one a feeling of peace. Jia Rong naturally dared to barge in. Who knew that he wouldn't be able to enter? The environment outside was really monotonous. There was only a lake, and around the lake was a sparse forest. There were beasts and birds. The mysterious man retreated and didn't appear in the wooden house. You weren't tired from that trip, so I was resting. Lingwen thought about it and walked to the forest to cut down a few trees. He personally built a wooden house by the lake. Since he had a way to leave, he could only take things as they came. I was also curious about who the person on the man's back was and why he had captured him. He knew that if he stayed outside for a long time, he wouldn't have a place to stay. Lingwen was familiar with building a wooden house and a bamboo house. After all, he had done it many times in the future. In just 2 hours, a 7-story wooden house was built. It was just across the lake from the mysterious man's wooden house. Although the mysterious man didn't show any kindness to me from the beginning to the end, I had to be vigilant. With his cultivation, I had to be careful. Lingwen set up some tactical formations in the distance of his wooden house, mainly for warning and isolation purposes. As for protection, it was necessary. The mysterious man was so weak. If he wanted to do something to me, I couldn't stop him with the protective tactical formations alone. It was better to waste my energy. Over the past few days, Lingwen spent some time walking around in the secret territory. Every time I did that, I could faintly feel a spiritual sense quietly watching me. Obviously, it was the mysterious man who was spying on me. Lingwen thought so too. The famous secret realm was so small, and the mysterious man's cultivation was so low. Unless I hid in my wooden house, I couldn't care less about him. It was the same as being right under the other party's nose. Hiding was just a matter of hiding. Only the wooden house that I didn't set up a tactical formation could be isolated from the man's divine sense. Other than investigating the secret realm, Jia Rong used the rest of her time to stimulate the power of her talent tree and devour the fire spirit stone. When I was captured by Lu Yueme, I felt a sense of crisis. As my cultivation improved, the chances of encountering Lu Yueme became smaller and smaller. If it was someone on my side, it would be fine. But if it was someone in the Spirit Sea realm or an enemy like the mysterious man, with my current strength, I couldn't resist at all. In fact, the next time Lingwen was chased by a Spirit Sea realm cultivator, he still felt a sense of crisis. It was just that without the protection of the sect master, the sense of crisis faded a little. Until now, when the sect master didn't protect me, it was more reliable to count on him. I could beat others, but at least I had to be slow. Only then could I increase my chances of survival. The flying wings Lu Yi alone was enough. Now that I was in the 7th order True Lake realm, even with the flying wings and wind walk, my speed was still slower than Lu Yueme. This was something that I didn't verify when I was chased by a Spirit Sea realm cultivator. Therefore, Lingwen urgently needed a new method, a method to escape from Lu Yueme's pursuit. I didn't have any expectations, but to achieve this, I had to rely on the talent tree. As long as this Lu Yi could be activated under the talent tree, I wouldn't be able to escape from an enemy that I had defeated in the past. I had been thinking about this Lu Yi for a long time. I didn't have many ideas and plans for how to use this Lu Yi, but unfortunately, I didn't activate it. But I was sure that this Lu Yi didn't exist under the talent tree. Jia Rong just didn't know the order. Therefore, I stopped devouring the fire spirit stone and wanted to try my luck. During that time, I didn't activate a new Lu Yi. The main reason was that I activated a Lu Yi the next time, which was enough for me to digest for a while. It wasn't until a few days later that Lingwen understood the true use of the twin lotus flowers on one stalk. Adhering to the principle of biting off more than you can chew, Lingwen decided to activate it under the talent tree. Now that the use of the twin lotus flowers on one stalk wasn't clear, it was naturally time to activate a new Lu Yi. I didn't have a small amount of fire spirit stones under me. In the past few months, I had been refining exploding fire spirit stones for the law division. I had obtained quite a few, so activating a few new Lu Yi shouldn't be a problem. As for whether I could get the one I wanted, it all depended on luck. That day, Lingwen had just returned from patrolling the sealed world. When he passed by the mysterious man's wooden house, the other party opened the window and a charming face entered my sight. He looked at me with a smile and asked, "He's been staying there all day. What is he looking for?" Chapter 999. "I'm bored, so I'm just taking a walk," Lu Yi said perfunctorily. The mysterious woman naturally wouldn't easily believe his words, but the corners of her mouth revealed a thought-provoking smile. Lu Yi was obviously looking for a way to leave this secret realm. However, there was only one exit and it was guarded by Dao 13. His efforts were destined to be in vain. "Let's exchange imprints," Lu Yi suddenly said. The woman was a bit surprised and looked at him with amusement. "You want to exchange imprints with me? What's the problem? What do you want to do?" The woman looked at him warily. "If you don't want to, then forget it." Lu Yi didn't force her. He turned and left. The woman stopped him. She raised her hand and touched her battlefield imprint. A blue light floated toward Lu Yi. Lu Yi was shocked. "You're from the Haotian Alliance." He thought she was from the Demon's Ridge, so she caught him. He didn't expect her to be from the Haotian Alliance. The woman smiled but didn't say anything. She looked mysterious. Lu Yi calmed herself down and said, "How should I address you? Are you trying to find out more about me?" The woman leaned against the window with her arms crossed in front of her chest. She looked a little lazy, but this laziness only added to her charm. Especially when her arms were crossed, her breasts were even more magnificent. Although she said that, she still said her name. "You know it." Lu Yi nodded slightly. He turned and walked back to his wooden house. As he walked, he checked his battlefield imprint. There were a lot of imprints in it. They were all exchanged after he stepped on the path of cultivation. These imprints were basically uncontactable. Only the one that belonged to Yu Daiwei could be contacted. Lu Yi wouldn't exchange imprints with a mysterious spirit ocean realm cultivator for no reason. He just wanted to verify one thing. Was this secret realm still within the 9 states? Now, it seemed that this secret realm was within the 9 states. Therefore, Yu Daiwei's imprint could be contacted under the cover of Heaven's Secrets. However, because the secret realm was separated from the world, there was no way to contact the outside world. This was the same as the secret realm of the realm of beasts that Lu Yi experienced. In the secret realm of the realm of beasts, Lu Yi could contact Yi. Another day passed, and Lu Yi was in the wooden house, urging the power of the talent tree to absorb the power of the fire spirit stone, when the wooden house's restriction was suddenly triggered. He quickly stopped what he was doing and got up to open the door. Yu Daiwei stood outside the door with a solemn expression. "Come with me, someone wants to see you." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows, thinking to himself that the main character had finally appeared. Previously, he had deduced that there was someone behind Yu Daiwei, and that it was that person who ordered her to capture him. However, these days, other than Dao Shisan, who was guarding the entrance, he and Yu Daiwei were the only 2 people in the secret territory. He guessed that the mastermind must have been delayed by something, so he didn't show up. But the other party would show up sooner or later. Lu Yi really wanted to know why that person ordered Yu Daiwei to capture him here. "Let's go." Lu Yi walked out of the log cabin. Yu Daiwei turned around and led the way. The last time he had followed behind her, she had walked in an enchanting manner, her small waist swaying like a water snake. This time, however, she was much more serious. Her entire charming temperament had been replaced by a quiet and well-behaved aura. Lu Yi realized more and more how powerful the mastermind was. Someone who could make a powerhouse like Yu Daiwei so respectful was naturally not an ordinary person. The mastermind was not far away, sitting on a chair in front of Yu Daiwei's wooden house, fishing with a fishing rod in his hand. When they approached, Yu Daiwei bowed. "My lord, I've brought him." "My lord?" Lu Yi frowned slightly. This was not a title that ordinary people could accept. The lord looked ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. If such a person stood in a crowd, Lu Yi wouldn't even look at him. But with Yu Daiwei's respect, Lu Yi knew that this person was not to be underestimated. The lord turned his head to look at him, his eyes as deep as the sea, with a hint of scrutiny. Suddenly he laughed loudly, looking very carefree. Even Yu Daiwei was confused for a moment. She didn't know why the lord was so happy. Lu Yi was even more confused by his laughter. Sit. After a while, the High Lord finally stopped smiling and said to Lu Yi, Brother Lu Yi, please go ahead. There was a chair next to him, obviously prepared for Lu Yi. Lu Yi thought for a moment, then sat down casually. He looked at the fishing float in the lake and said, There are no fish in this lake. When he first arrived a few days ago, he had investigated this lake. It was a dead lake. Other than the clear water, there were only some weeds and insects. There were no fish at all. The Lord smiled gently. His smile was warm and very infectious. Whether there are fish or not, fishing depends on one's mood. Lu Yi couldn't help but think that there was something wrong with this person's brain, but he couldn't figure out the style of such an expert. The Lord continued, Besides, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The fishing float suddenly moved. The High Lord raised his hand, and a fresh carp was hooked up. Lu Ye's eyes widened a little. He really couldn't understand why. When he went to investigate the lake previously, he didn't see any fish. Where did the carp that the Lord caught come from? After calming himself down, he suddenly said, Chen Tianshui is one of your people. He had not thought of this before, but when he heard Yu Daiwei address this person as Lord, Lu Yi suddenly recalled the words Chen Tianshui had said before he died. As expected of the person he fancied. Lu Yi didn't hear it clearly at that time, but there were too many suspicious points about the Qin family that day. There were many things that he couldn't understand. However, if Chen Tianshui said before he died, as expected of the person the Lord fancied, then it made sense. The topic changed too quickly. Even someone like the Lord couldn't react in time. However, he admitted it quickly. That's right. Chen Tianshui is my man. Your insight is very sharp. Can you tell me how you found out? I guessed. Lu Yi shook his head and didn't intend to explain. If you want to harm me, why did you capture me? Yu Daiwei helped the Lord take off the hook and put the bait on again. The Lord threw the bait into the water and then said, Although Chen Tianshui is my man, the Chen family's matter has nothing to do with me. It was Chen Tianshui who made the decision on his own, so his death isn't regrettable. I've never wanted to harm you. Let me put it this way. If there's one person in the world who doesn't want to harm you, it's me. Lu Yi ignored his words. How could he believe such words that were used to coax a child? Then why did the Lord ask someone to bring me here? The Lord was silent for a while, then suddenly turned to look at Lu Yi. What do you think of the world situation? The topic changed too quickly. Lu Yi was stunned. He frowned and said, I'm just one of the many living things. I'm just going with the flow. You underestimate yourself too much. The Lord smiled and raised his fishing rod. This time, he caught nothing. The bait on the hook was gone. He put down the fishing rod and didn't have the intention to continue fishing. He said slowly, The world is bustling with activity. The two big camps are fighting against each other. It has been more than 2,000 years since there were records. In such a long time, how many heroes of the 9 prefectures have fallen? How many young talents have failed? How many sects have been annihilated? The number of cultivators who die every year is incalculable. This topic was too heavy. It was so heavy that Lu Yi couldn't interrupt. Moreover, he didn't have the right to comment on this issue. Since the beginning of every cultivator's cultivation, the Grand Heaven Alliance killed the Myriad Devil Ridge, and the Myriad Devil Ridge killed the Grand Heaven Alliance. This concept was deeply ingrained and couldn't be easily shaken. Lu Yi was just one of the cultivators in the 9 prefectures. Naturally, he was not an exception. Not to mention other things, the number of Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who died in his hands in the past few years was not small. Because of his actions, the Myriad Devil Ridge also hated him to the core. But why does the world have to be like this? Can't it be something else? Lu Yi frowned. Lord, what do you want it to be like? The Lord smiled faintly with a longing expression. Without the Grand Heaven Alliance and the Myriad Devil Ridge, there will naturally be no endless confrontation between the two camps. Mortals can live and work in peace, and cultivators can cultivate steadily. The world will be at peace, without the disturbance of war and without the confrontation between the camps. There will be no conflict. It's a good world, but the Lord is thinking too much. Lu Ye's heart trembled. How big was the Lord's ambition? He actually wanted to unify the 9 prefectures and eliminate the gap between the camps. However, this kind of thing was simply impossible to achieve. The Lord also said that the confrontation between the 2 camps has been going on for more than 2,000 years. There is a blood feud between the 2 camps. How can it be easily resolved? It can't be easily resolved, but it doesn't mean that there is no way to resolve it. In the end, it all depends on human effort. Are you thinking that I want to unify the 9 prefectures? The Lord didn't answer but asked instead. Lu Yi didn't feel embarrassed that his thoughts were exposed. Isn't that so? The Lord shook his head. Someone tried to do this a few decades ago. He almost succeeded, but in the end he still failed. That person is extremely talented. I admit that I am not as good as him. If he couldn't do it, I naturally can't do it either. Lu Yi understood who he was talking about. Other than his senior martial brother, there was no one else. It seems that this lord is related to his senior martial brother. However, that person relied on the Grand Heaven Alliance. In the final battle, the Myriad Devil Ridge faced a strong counterattack. It is reasonable that he failed at the last step. Therefore, he wanted to borrow the Grand Heaven Alliance or the Myriad Devil Ridge's camp to completely eliminate the other party. It won't work. The hatred between the 2 camps is as deep as the sea. Who would be willing to be eliminated by the other? The more oppressed, the stronger the counterattack. That person failed because of this reason. However, what if there is another camp in this world? A brand new camp that can accept all the people. Do you think that if such a camp really appears, many people will come to join it? Lu Ye's frown deepened. That will depend on the foundation of this camp. He faintly felt that the Lord's next words were going to be earth-shattering. I want to take all the women in the world into my harem and have fun every night. The Lord said leisurely. Lu Ye's face darkened. He raised his mouth and said, "He shit on you. Just wait to be eliminated." Chapter 1000. That's the point. The High Lord was a little excited. Since it's a new faction, it will naturally be different from Grand Sky Alliance and Myriad Demon Ridge. A new faction will not compete with others. I believe that if this is true, it will definitely attract a large number of cultivators. In this world, there are many cultivators who are tired of the conflict between the 2 factions. Yu Daiwei stood behind the Great Lord and looked at the excited expression on his face. She was in disbelief. She had followed the High Lord for so many years, but she had never seen such an expression on his face. What was even more unbelievable was that the person who made the High Lord react this way was actually a young man at the 5th Order True Lake Realm. She was well aware of the Great Lord's arrogance. Even the sect masters and sect masters of the top sects in the 9 prefectures might not be regarded highly by the Great Lord. In the eyes of the Great Lord, those so-called sect masters and sect masters were mostly rotten people. But now, seeing the High Lord and Luya talking so happily, as if they were discussing the Tao, how could she not be surprised? She also felt that the High Lord valued this young man even more. But even she didn't know why the High Lord valued Lu Yi so much. There should be. Lu Yi nodded. If such a faction really appeared in this world, it was very likely that it would attract many people to join it. Just as the High Lord said, there were many people who were tired of the conflict between the 2 factions, but most of the time, they couldn't do anything about it. Most cultivators didn't have any enmity with each other. Just because they were in opposing factions, there was no reason for them to fight. Lu Yi changed the topic and said, "Generously speaking, the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union is such a faction." The High Lord was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "It's the same. The Heavenly Secret Merchant Union is a business, so it can't be confused. We are indeed competing with others, but business doesn't pay attention to harmony and wealth. How can we compete with others?" High Lord wants to create such a faction? Lu Yi understood what I meant. Primal Chaos. The High Lord said, "Grand Sky Alliance, Luya, one is yin, one is yang. Yin and yang coexist and harmonize yin and yang. Yin and yang together is primal chaos." So, in the end, the High Lord wants to unify the 4 states. Lu Yi hit the nail on the head. The Lord shook his head. Unifying the 4 prefectures is not your goal. You just want to change the current situation of the 4 prefectures. Lu Yi fell silent. Indeed, it was a good thing that that person didn't have such ambitions. He was sure that he could really do that. This would be beneficial to the 4 states. The conflict between the 2 factions would become history, and very few people would die. However, there were some things that had good intentions, and the process would definitely be so beautiful. Pan Ying could predict that there would be no faction called chaos that would suddenly rise in that world, and the world of the 4 prefectures would only become more chaotic. If that's the case, why did the High Lord capture you? Lu Yi asked the question in his heart. Even though the High Lord had told me so little, Lu Yi still didn't understand why I wanted to capture him. You need him to help you. The High Lord looked at me with sincerity. Lu Yi and I looked at each other for a moment, and then said, "The High Lord thinks too highly of you. You're just a great true Lake Realm cultivator. How can you help the High Lord achieve such a small goal? You said that he has to think highly of himself. He doesn't have his own power. This is the power you have." The High Lord smiled. As he spoke, he took out a palm-sized disc and handed it to Lu Yi. Lu Yi hesitated for a moment, and then reached out to take it. He looked at it carefully. The disc looked like it was made of stone, and there were many complicated patterns on the surface of the disc. It was dazzling to look at, and if one didn't look at it for a while, it would make one feel dizzy, as if one's mind was being sucked into it. It was obviously a special stone disc, but Pan Ying couldn't tell what it was. While Lu Yi was observing the disc, the High Lord was observing me as well. Since I was a top-tier weakling at such a close distance, Lu Yi was able to conceal even the slightest of reactions. However, the High Lord couldn't help but frown when he saw the disc. That was because there were some things that were quite similar to what I had expected. "What is it?" Lu Yi asked. "He can tell?" The High Lord asked. Lu Yi shook his head. The High Lord smiled and didn't explain anything. He took the strange stone disc back from Lu Ye's hand. "He has something to do, so he can go back." The topic started abruptly, and we were talking about it just a moment ago. Lu Yi also thought the same. He stood up and walked towards his wooden house. Before I left, Pan Ying asked, "High Lord, am I the person he is looking for? Why is this so? It's not the right time." The High Lord leaned against the back of the chair and frowned. He didn't seem disappointed. "Then what is the stone disc?" Myriad Devil's Ridge couldn't hold back his curiosity. The High Lord played with the stone disc in his hand, and after a long time, he said, "It's a token to create a new faction." Pan Ying's pupils shrank. After following the High Lord for a long time, you naturally know some secrets that only a normal person would know. To create something like a faction, it's very complicated to talk about it, and it also requires a banner. It has to be denied by the heavens. Take the current Grand Sky Alliance and Pan Ying as an example. They were both factions that were denied by the heavens. Thus, the battlefield imprints of Grand Sky Alliance's cultivators would be blue, while Lu Ye's would be red. The 4 prefectures were small and shrouded by the heavens. Everything had to go around the mysterious heavens. If they were denied by heaven's secrets, then even if they were to raise the banner of a new faction, they would not be able to last long. If they were denied by heaven's secrets, then they would be able to change the marks on the battlefield. When cultivators from the same faction met, they would be able to quickly determine who was friend or foe. Since there isn't such an item, why did the High Lord use it? Myriad Devil's Ridge asked. The High Lord had been preparing for the new faction. Now that there wasn't such an item, the creation of a new faction was just a snap of the fingers. The High Lord shook his head. "You used it and so did he. Only those who aren't favored by the heavens can use this item. A few decades later, no one was qualified to use this item, but I hid it away because I had too much blood feud to bear. Even if I used this item, I still had a way to win over Lu Ye's people. Dozens of years ago, Yu Daiwei was probably the only one who wasn't qualified to use this item. But judging from my reaction just now, I must have used it. Otherwise, I would have known the use of this item before I got my hands on it. It's not the right time yet." The High Lord sighed in his heart. "What should I do?" Myriad Devil's Ridge didn't understand why the High Lord wanted him to capture Lu Yi. Obviously it was for the stone plate. Now that Pan Ying had a way to use the stone plate, Its value was reduced slightly. If he could kill Lu Ye, it was not the right time yet. Since Lu Ye had a way to use the stone plate, it meant that it was possible in the past. But he couldn't just let him go. You don't have to control me. I will leave by myself. The High Lord stood up quickly as he said that. Myriad Devil's Ridge was shocked. The High Lord thinks I can leave that place? That place is a big secret realm, and the exit is guarded by Dao Shiba. Without the High Lords or your orders, Dao Shiba won't let you go. How can Panning Rong, a true Lake Realm cultivator, not have a way to leave? Those who are blessed by the heavens can always do things that ordinary people can't. If I have a way to leave, then I'll be the person you're looking for. If I'm the person you're looking for, then I'll die of old age outside. The High Lord walked towards the exit. There is one thing I haven't told Myriad Devil's Ridge. Through close observation, I found that Lu Ye hasn't been enlightened. But Myriad Devil's Ridge reported that Chen Tianshui hadn't enlightened Lu Ye, which is not something that ordinary people can resist. Myriad Devil's Ridge's report can be wrong. In other words, Chen Tianshui did enlighten Lu Ye, but for some reason, it didn't work on Lu Ye. Chapter 1001. Hearing Lu Ye's words, Yu Daiwei thought for a moment, then turned to 13 and said, "Don't go into this room. Whenever he shows his face, follow him closely. You must not leave his side." "Yes," Dao 13 still responded woodenly. "Stay here." Yu Daiwei looked at him mockingly before turning around and walking towards the exit of the sealed world. It seemed that she was really going to leave. Lu Yi stepped forward and followed. Yu Daiwei naturally knew what he meant and didn't stop him. A moment later, the exit of the sealed world opened and Yu Daiwei disappeared. After she disappeared, the exit of the sealed world quickly closed. Lu Yi turned to look at Dao 13, who was standing next to him. He wondered what his chances of killing Dao 13 were if he used Dragon Emperor. Although he didn't know what Dao 13's Divine Sea cultivation level was, he was certain that he was weaker than Yu Daiwei. However, after looking at Dao 13's sturdy body, Lu Yi gave up on his plan. It would be too difficult for him to kill such a Divine Sea cultivator head-on. Even if he was lucky enough to kill Dao 13, it wouldn't be of much help to his plan to escape. In the end, he would still be trapped in this sealed world. However, the Great Lord and Yu Daiwei had left, leaving only Dao 13, who didn't seem very smart. The opportunity he had been waiting for had finally arrived. Before, Yu Daiwei had been in this nameless sealed world and it was inconvenient for Lu Yi to do many things, but how could he just accept his fate? During the few days I was captured, I did everything I could. As for how to escape from this place, I did not have a clear plan. I thought that I could carry out the plan in a short time, but the opportunity came too late. He walked back to his wooden house with Dao 18 following closely behind. Just as Feng Shuangfei had instructed, they were separated. Ling Wen tried to communicate with me, but Dao 18 didn't respond, so he simply gave up. Inside the wooden house, Ling Wen sat cross-legged and immersed himself in observing the talent tree. During those few days, I used the power of the talent tree to devour all the fire spirit stones in my hands. Under the tree, not a small amount of leaves were ignited. Among them, a small number of leaves did not bear Yi Jian. Even so, the spirit pattern gained 2 new land leaves. What exactly were those 2 new land leaves? The main reason why I hadn't investigated them was because I didn't have any expectations. I wanted to stimulate fewer land leaves and see if I could get what I wanted. However, the fire spirit stones in his eyes had not been completely consumed, and Feng Shuangfei had also left. Naturally, he could wait for a while longer. He had a vague feeling that the more he wanted something, the more he would be able to get it. Naturally, they were the same. That Yi Jian, Spirit Tattoo's eyes lit up. He stood up and pushed open the door of the wooden house. Dao 18 stood there like a wooden stake. His sturdy body looked loose, but it contained a shocking amount of explosive power. "Raise your head," Spirit Tattoos instructed. Dao 18 acted as if he heard her. Spirit Tattoos had no choice but to activate the Soul Control Divine Tattoo on Dao 18. After several encounters, Spirit Tattoos realized that Dao 18's intelligence was flawless. I was indeed weak, But how could I be so smart? Therefore, Spirit Tattoos wanted to try using the Soul Control Divine Tattoo on Tao 18. If I succeeded, I would be able to control Tao 18. At that time, I would be able to open the entrance of the secret realm and leave. Above the surging divine thoughts, Ling Wen could clearly feel that there was no small resistance hindering his divine thoughts from behind. It seemed to be a barrier that could be seen by the naked eye. This was Tao 18's soul defense. Although that guy was smart, he was still Yu Dai Wei. How could it be so difficult to break through his soul defense? On the other hand, Spirit Tattoo's head buzzed. He felt as if he had bumped into an iron wall and felt dizzy. It was also a battle of souls, but it was obvious that Tao 18 was stronger. Shaking his head, Spirit Tattoo's vision quickly recovered. He saw that Tao 18 was looking at him with a frown. He didn't seem angry at all. Spirit Tattoos calmed down a little and activated the Soul Control Divine Tattoo again. With a bang, the feeling of bumping into an iron wall came again. Spirit Tattoo's body staggered, and his reaction was even smaller than before. Fortunately, Spirit Tattoos didn't feel thirsty. Instead, he felt nauseous, which was a sign that he had used too much energy. Simply activating the Soul Control Divine Tattoo wouldn't cause such a small reaction. However, Spirit Tattoos suffered a huge backlash because he was able to break through Tao 18's soul defense. He hurriedly took out a drop of soul-cleansing water and drank it. Only then did he recover. Looking up, Spirit Tattoos saw that Tao 18 was even angrier. His fists were clenched and cracking sounds could be heard from his knuckles. His eyes were like copper bells, and cold air was coming out of his nostrils. He looked like he was about to beat someone up. The corner of Spirit Tattoo's eyes twitched. He couldn't help but feel guilty. He felt as if he was bullying an honest person. Hardening his heart, he used the Soul Control Divine Tattoo on Tao 18 for the 8th time. As the saying goes, things can be done 8 times. If it was effective again, there would be a chance. Yi Jianxian wasn't mentally prepared for this. Although I was lucky enough to give birth to a divine sense and a soul body, I was still the real Yi Jianxian. At the true lake realm, my soul was weak. However, to the real Yu Dai Wei, it was nothing. It was very difficult for her to break through Tao 18's soul defense. Another violent collision occurred, and Spirit Tattoos felt dizzy again. In his vision, there didn't seem to be a single fist that was slowing down. Soon after, he fell to the ground. After a while, Spirit Tattoos slowly woke up. After drinking a drop of soul-cleansing water, he felt a lot better. However, in the deity's lake, he had used up a lot of his divine sense. I quickly climbed up from the ground and shook my head. I felt that something wasn't right. Raising my hand, I wiped my nose and mouth. My hand was covered in blood. The memories after I fainted came back. I raised my head and stared at Tao 18 in rage. He punched you? Then, my soul shook and I saw a fist slowly shrinking in my vision. Only now did I realize that I had been punched by Tao 18. Tao 18 held his head high and moved. Although I was quick-witted, I knew that I had done the right thing. The main thing was that I had restrained myself for a moment, which was my body's instinctive reaction. Spirit Tattoos was even more furious. His master told him to monitor you. Who told him to punch you? As he said that, he kicked Tao 18's chest. Tao 18's body shook, but he was calm. On the other hand, Spirit Tattoo's expression changed. He quickly retracted the leg that he had kicked out. One could see that his thigh was trembling. That fellow's body was really special. That kick didn't affect me at all. On the other hand, Spirit Tattoo's leg wasn't numb at all. After being kicked, Tao 18's body shrank. I didn't have a hunched body, but now I looked even hunchier. It was as if I had done something wrong. Have you ever done that before? Spirit Tattoos glared at me and closed the door. He squatted down and rubbed his thigh that wasn't cramping. I was sure that soul control didn't work on Tao 18. At the very least, once my soul power surpassed Tao 18's, it wouldn't work. I had a way to break through Tao 18's soul defense, so how could he control me? In the wooden house, Spirit Tattoos recovered for a while and activated the split shadow leaf. After a while, a split image formed from my own spirit energy and blood energy. I then used the twin lotus flowers on one stalk on the split image. The roots of the talent tree retreated into the shadow, and it slowly became real. Very slowly, a shadow that was 70% the size of the main body appeared. Chapter 1002. In the wooden house, Lu Yi condensed his doppelganger, took out his clothes, and threw them to the doppelganger to wear them. After checking carefully and making sure that there was nothing wrong, he constructed the concealment and aura concealment spirit runes to enhance himself and disappeared. The doppelganger pushed open the door. Dao 13, who was standing outside, looked up immediately. The clone ignored him and flew off into the distance. Dao 13 followed closely behind like a shadow. It was not until the doppelganger brought Dao 13 to the border of the nameless secret realm that Lu Ye's real body began to move. He sneaked out of the wooden house and went straight to the entrance. The entrance was some distance away from the lake. As long as he was careful enough, Dao 13 would not notice. When he arrived at the entrance, Lu Ye's real body appeared. Like Yu Daiwei, he pressed his hand to the void and activated his spiritual power. Strictly speaking, the opening of the secret realm's entrance was the same as the opening of the storage bag's restriction lock. If the secret realm was regarded as a storage bag, then the secret realm's entrance would be the restriction lock. However, the restriction lock at the entrance of the secret realm was much more complicated than the restriction lock of the storage bag. Lu Yi had a lot of experience in opening restriction locks. After all, he had practiced it before. Given some time, he was confident that he could open the secret realm's entrance. However, after a few attempts, Lu Yi gave up. If he continued like this, his spiritual power would be too obvious. Dao 13 might notice him. After all, the secret realm was not big and Dao 13 was in the Divine Sea realm. If Dao 13 noticed him, the doppelganger's secret would be exposed. Dao 13 would follow Yu Daiwei's orders and kill him. Setting up a concealment array formation here was one way, but Lu Yi couldn't guarantee that Yu Daiwei or that High Lord wouldn't come in while he was doing this. If Yu Daiwei or that High Lord came in and was caught red-handed, then things would become awkward. The risk was too great. This method would not work. Since that was the case, there was only one way left to escape from this place, and it was also the only way. Yu Daiwei felt that with Lu Ye's ability and Dao 13's tight defense, there was no way he could leave the secret realm. However, it was not difficult for Lu Yi to leave. It would just take some time. His real body returned to the wooden house and continued to hide. The avatar brought Dao 13 to the entrance and sat down cross-legged. Increasing the distance between the main body and the doppelganger would reduce the chances of Dao Shisan discovering the main body. After making sure that Dao 13's attention was on his doppelganger, he left the wooden house and flew in a certain direction. It didn't take long for them to reach their destination. He wasn't in a hurry to make a move. First, he set up some concealment formations in this area. Then he rummaged through his storage space. Soon he found a pick-shaped spirit tool. Digging. With the concealment of the array and the distance between them and Dao Shisan, Lu Yi was not worried that he would be exposed. He went all out. His efficiency was still very high. In a short while, he had dug out a large hole and went all the way down. For the next 2 days, Lu Yi was busy here, directly digging out a hole that was more than 100 feet deep. With the last strike, something seemed to have been dug through, and rich world energy suddenly escaped, wrapping around the place where Lu Yi was. Lu Yi was overjoyed, knowing that he had found the spirit vein of this mystic realm. This was the key to leaving this place. With his previous experience on the Wushuang continent, Lu Yi naturally knew that small mystic realms separated from the great world relied on spirit veins or earth veins. Only then could the mystic realm be maintained for a long time. Back then, he had planted the divine pillars in several mystic realms on the Wushuang continent. The divine pillars had drained the earth veins of those mystic realms, causing the doors of those mystic realms to be exposed. It was the same in the sword instrument sect's mystic realm. The earth lung fire was what maintained the sword instrument sect's mystic realm. Back then, he had spent 2 months activating the power of the talent tree to continuously absorb the earth lung fire, causing the sword instrument sect's mystic realm to completely collapse. With all these experiences, Lu Yi naturally knew that once the spirit vein of this mystic realm weakened to a critical point, the mystic realm would no longer be able to maintain itself. Therefore, in order to leave this mystic realm, he didn't actually need to open the door. He only needed to find a way to absorb the power of the spirit vein that the mystic realm relied on to quickly dry up the spirit vein. This method would definitely take a long time, but the advantage was that it was safe and covert. Previously, during the few days that Yu Daiwei was here, Lu Yi would spend some time walking around and looking around every day. However, it wasn't as simple as just walking around and looking around. He was just looking for the intersection of the spirit vein. According to his divine telekinesis, this was the place where the spirit vein was the shallowest, so he chose to dig a hole here. Now that the spirit vein had appeared, what he had to do was very simple. He just had to activate the power of the talent tree and absorb the power of the spirit vein. It would take some time, but this was his only way out at the moment. He wasn't in a hurry to activate the power of the talent tree. He flew out of the hole and checked the formation layout around him. After confirming that the concealment formation was working well, he wouldn't be exposed as long as he didn't deliberately come here to investigate. Only then did he fly back to the bottom of the hole and sit down cross-legged. He activated the power of the talent tree. In an instant, roots that were invisible to the naked eye extended and probed in all directions. As his cultivation base increased, the range that the talent tree's roots could extend had obviously increased. In other words, the efficiency of the talent tree's absorption had also increased. The roots pierced into the spirit vein. Following Lu Ye's actions, the talent tree's roots emitted an irresistible devouring power and absorbed the power of the spirit vein. As he immersed himself in observing, a faint gray mist floated up from the talent tree. This was clearly a sign that the talent tree was burning impurities. Although the power in the spirit vein was vigorous, it wasn't pure. This couldn't be compared to cultivating with the spirit sticks. Every time he used the spirit sticks to cultivate, the talent tree basically didn't have much of a reaction. This was enough to show the purity of the spiritual power absorbed. However, under this kind of absorption, the talent tree's burning could also ensure the purity of his spiritual power. He silently activated his mysterious art and guarded his mind. This method was undoubtedly extremely boring, but other than this, Lu Yi couldn't find a better way to escape. At the entrance, his clone was also sitting cross-legged, looking bored. Dao Shisan stood beside him like a wooden stake, motionless. If it weren't for his light breathing, anyone would have thought that he was a dead person. Days passed by. The secret realm was peaceful. At a certain moment, the entrance to the secret realm opened and Yu Daiwei's figure flashed in. At a glance, she saw Lu Yi sitting there, seemingly cultivating. She couldn't help but frown. "What the hell are you doing?" These days, she would come to the secret realm every 10 days to half a month, mainly to check if there was anything unusual with Lu Yi. Every time she came, Lu Yi would be sitting cross-legged at the entrance. She didn't think that Lu Yi had resigned himself to fate. After all, the Lord had said that Lu Yi definitely had a way to leave this secret realm. However, he could leave just by meditating. Yu Daiwei faintly felt that the Lord had misjudged him this time. The clone opened his eyes and glanced at Yu Daiwei, then continued to sit with his eyes closed as if he didn't see her. Yu Daiwei didn't get a response, but she didn't care. She turned to Dao Shisan and said, "Look after him." Then she turned and left. She never stayed here mainly because the Lord wasn't here. There was no point for her to stay here. Moreover, she had many things to do, so she didn't have the time to stay here. If it weren't for investigating Lu Ye's situation, she wouldn't have come to this secret realm so easily. After she left, the main body breathed a sigh of relief. Although he had arranged a concealment array, and Yu Daiwei might not be able to find any clues even if she entered the secret realm to investigate, there was always a possibility. Fortunately, Yu Daiwei didn't expect that there would be someone in this world who could display such a miraculous clone technique that even a spirit sea cultivator like her couldn't see through. Since she saw Lu Yi sitting quietly at the entrance, there was no need to investigate further. In the pit more than 1,000 meters underground, Lu Yi continued to stimulate the power of his talent tree to devour the power of the spirit vein. It had been more than a month since he fell into this place. During such a long time, the talent tree had been constantly devouring and absorbing power, which was equivalent to him maintaining a state of cultivation. Lu Yi had never cultivated for such a long time before. So, even if the efficiency of his cultivation wasn't as high as thieving heaven's secrets, it still allowed him to break through a minor realm and reach the sixth-order true lake realm. However, the power of the spirit vein was still abundant. If he wanted it to reach that critical point, he didn't know how long it would take. During this time, Lu Yi had thought of a way to increase the efficiency of absorbing the power of the spirit vein. That was to condense another clone and have it help him devour the spirit vein. The clone had all the abilities of the main body, so it could naturally cultivate. Lu Yi had also tested this a few days ago, but the only problem was that the clone didn't have enough talent tree fuel, so once it began cultivating, it would find it difficult to maintain the purity of its own spirit chi because the clone couldn't burn off the minute impurities in its spirit chi. The main body was different. The main body had a lot of talent tree fuel stored in it. Not to mention anything else, just the 2 months of earth lung fire he had devoured in the sword instrument sealed world was quite impressive. That was why Lu Yi could now devour the power of the spirit vein without any fear of affecting his foundation. But this wasn't a big problem. The clone would eventually be devoured by the main body, and at that time, the power in the clone's body would also be tempered and purified. As long as he could successfully condense another clone, the efficiency would increase exponentially. If he could condense 2 clones, the efficiency would double again. But after some attempts, Lu Yi didn't succeed. Chapter 1003. The mystery of the doppelganger lay in the talent tree root that remained in the doppelganger's body. It was this root that allowed the doppelganger to become lifelike, making it difficult to distinguish the real from the doppelganger. It also allowed the doppelganger and the main body to maintain a close connection no matter how far apart they were. The main body could stimulate the doppelganger and construct the twin lotus flowers on one stalk inside the doppelganger, but the talent tree could no longer extend its roots into the doppelganger. Lu Yi vaguely felt that this was related to the degree of conversion of the talent tree. The talent tree had been converted once, so it could split out a root but not a second one. If the talent tree was converted a few more times in the future, the number of doppelganger he could condense would definitely increase. This also made him realize the preciousness of his doppelganger. Before, he subconsciously felt that the doppelganger couldn't be destroyed at will. The loss of vitality, spiritual energy was secondary. If he lost the talent tree root in the doppelganger, it would be a huge loss. But now, it seemed that the loss of the doppelganger was much more serious than he had imagined. It was very likely that he would never be able to condense a new doppelganger. Time passed. After being trapped in the sealed world for more than 2 months, Lu Ye's cultivation had reached the 7th order true lake realm. During this time, Yu Daiwei came again and still saw Lu Ye's doppelganger sitting cross-legged at the entrance with Dao 13 quietly guarding it. After that, she didn't come again. In her opinion, Lu Yi had already accepted his fate and there was no way he could escape from the sealed world. Since that was the case, there was no need for her to waste time and pay less attention to him. Another half a month passed in a flash. On that day, as I was urging the talent tree to absorb the power of the spirit vein, I suddenly felt my body shake. There was a muffled sound of thunder coming from the depths of the ground, followed by a tremor. I hurriedly opened my eyes and spread out my divine sense, carefully probing the surroundings. Duo Qing's face lit up with joy. After cultivating outside for 2.5 months and constantly absorbing the power of the spirit vein, I finally saw some results. The normalcy just now was the most obvious sign. At the entrance of the secret realm, Dao 18 also sensed that the secret realm was normal. Although he didn't look surprised, he knew exactly what was going on. If Yu Daiwei was outside and wanted to investigate, even if Wang Shan set up a small concealment array at the bottom of the pit, it might not be able to hide from your eyes. As the commotion died down, Dao 18 also calmed down and continued to stand outside like a wooden stake. My clone, who had been paying close attention to my movements, heaved a sigh of relief. I hadn't made up my mind just now. If fixed Dao 18 didn't do anything strange, he would immediately do something to attract my attention. The plan was beginning to bear fruit, but it was still far from success. That's right, the power of the spirit veins in this secret realm was still very rich and abundant. If the spiritual energy wanted to completely devour the spirit veins outside, it wouldn't be possible in a short period of time. However, I didn't need to completely devour them. I just needed to let the spirit veins reach a critical point, a point where I could maintain the secret realm. The secret realm was like a house, and the spirit veins were the foundation of the house. The spiritual energy didn't need to completely destroy the foundation. As long as a part of it was damaged, the house would self-destruct. Over the next few days, the commotion in the secret realm became more and more frequent. Sometimes, there would be no buzzing sounds coming from the depths of the ground. Every time this happened, the entire secret realm would shake. Even the clear sky of the secret realm started to show some strange phenomena. It was a sign that the secret realm was about to collapse. Dao 18 was affected and didn't seem to be in the right mood. After all, I was at the Spirit Sea realm and subconsciously felt safer. However, I had to follow Yu Daiwei's instructions and follow the spiritual energy with every step. I was in a dilemma. Even with Ling Guang's brain, I didn't know what to do. Every time my clone opened his eyes to look at me, he could see my calm expression. Sometimes, he would let out a beast-like roar. Finally, at a certain moment, a huge buzzing sound could be heard. The wind and clouds in the secret realm changed. The sky suddenly cracked open like a broken mirror. Even the scenery in the secret realm stopped twisting and changing. The secret realm was about to collapse. After what happened in the Sword Tool Sect's secret realm, Wang Shan was very familiar with it. Once the secret realm collapsed, Dao 18 and I would leave the cage. What I had to do next was complicated. I had to retrieve my clone and get rid of Dao 18. At the same time, a door appeared at the exit of the secret realm. Because the secret realm was about to collapse, the closed door didn't show any signs of opening. Through the door, I could vaguely see the scenery inside. Dao 18 looked at the door in surprise. He didn't understand why it was like this. My clone, who was sitting cross-legged next to me, suddenly opened his eyes. Dao 18 immediately looked at me. The clone smiled at me. "Let's not meet again." As soon as he finished speaking, the Wang Shan around him activated and poured into the small formation on his body. I had already set up a teleportation formation on my body. I didn't set it up just yesterday. I didn't want Wang Shanai to see it when she retreated. There was no obstruction during the process. Dao 18 was only responsible for watching me. He followed Yu Daiwei's order and let me try to open the door. He didn't care if I was setting up a formation or not. Little formation friends, Yuan Death, Inner Hero, Second Up, Doppelganger Shadow. Dao 18 was stunned for a moment. Then he opened his mouth and roared. Visible waves of air shot out of his mouth and shot up to 100 feet. I quickly rushed to the spot where my clone had disappeared and dug a small hole with both hands. However, there was no trace of spiritual energy. Then, I used my divine will to search for Wang Shan's whereabouts. Still, I couldn't find anything. There was no formation to hide the spirit energy. The secret realm was in chaos. Wang Shan was agitated. Even a divine sea realm expert like Dao 18 wouldn't be able to find anything in a short time. About 100 feet away, my clone returned through the teleportation formation. Wang Shan pressed a hand under the clone and used the power of the talent tree to retrieve it. Just as he was done, the secret realm collapsed with a loud rumble. A large and small crack suddenly appeared in the sky. It was as deep as an abyss. Spirit energy rushed into the sky and rushed toward the crack. Ruined state. As for how to get rid of Dao 18, I could only improvise. No matter what, it was weaker than being trapped in the secret realm. As soon as I appeared, Dao 18 didn't notice me. He roared and jumped up to chase after spirit energy. At this moment, the spiritual energy had already rushed out of the crack. However, my expression changed in the next moment. Because my expectation of returning to the four states was not realized. Instead, spirit energy felt like he had fallen into a bottomless abyss and was falling upward. The feeling It wasn't like teleportation, and it was a long-distance teleportation. The whole process brought me a wonderful experience. While he was dizzy and disoriented, his spiritual power only felt that his mind was rising. In the dark, I seemed to be in an inexplicable void. In an ordinary environment, it was visible to the naked eye and could be perceived by the mind, but there was no strange scene. This was a huge plate in the shape of a gourd. It floated in the void. I didn't know where it came from and where it was going. It was like a lone boat sailing in the boundless ocean, and it seemed lonely and bleak. Spirit energy initially reacted to what it was, but soon he was shocked and lost consciousness. That huge plate in the shape of a gourd was a world. Was that the true appearance of the four states? I thought so in my heart. I wasn't surprised. The four states actually looked like that? What puzzled me even more was that I was just escaping when the famous secret realm collapsed. How could my mind be so low that I could see the full appearance of the four states? But soon, I was shocked because I suddenly realized that it might be the four prefectures. I had never seen the map of the entire four states, but I didn't have the map of the war state. Comparing the two, I didn't see any unfamiliar traces from the huge plate behind my eyes. It was very unlikely that it was the four states, but it was definitely the world of the four states. What kind of place was it? Just as I was shocked, the huge plate in the shape of a gourd slowly shrank in my vision. My inexplicably low mind suddenly returned to my body. It was only then that I realized my situation. I was falling towards this gourd-shaped world at an extremely slow speed. There were meteorites falling from the sky beside me. I was mixed in with the falling meteorites, and I didn't stand out at all. What made me feel even more regretful was that there wasn't a layer of inexplicable power protecting me. Although the speed of my fall was extremely slow, I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Spirit Energy's eyes twitched and he didn't have any guesses in his heart. The situation in front of my eyes. It was most likely the work of the four states' heavenly secrets. The inexplicable power protecting me was the most obvious evidence. That power might have appeared out of thin air. I didn't activate Lu Yi myself. Apart from this mysterious and unfathomable heaven's will, who else could have been able to silently support me? Next time, with her experience with Lu Yi, Wang Shan naturally knew that there was only the four states in that world. So, this huge plate in the shape of a gourd must be another world that I knew about. But what made me understand was, why did heavenly secrets send me outside? There were no signs at all. I just wanted to escape from this famous secret realm. In the end, after leaving this famous secret realm and returning to the four states, I came to such a place and arrived there in such a way. It was simply inexplicable. But looking at everything that happened after, heavenly secrets would make mistakes. Since I was sent here, it was clear that heavenly secrets wanted me to do something outside. There was no road behind the mountain, so it was better to think less. Above me was a small land that was slowly approaching. Around it were pieces of fiercely burning meteorites. Seeing that I was less than 300 meters below the ground, I was about to use my spiritual energy to activate my Lu Yi to fly through the air. However, just as I was about to do so, I suddenly discovered that my Lu Yi had been imprisoned within my body. Great Sage of Human Tao. Chapter 1004. This time, Lu Yi was scared out of his wits. At this moment he was falling from a height of 10,000 feet, like a meteorite falling from the sky. However, he was confident that he could fly, so he did not panic at all. However, if he could not even use his spiritual power, how could he fly? At such a high altitude, even if he had the foundation of a true lake stage cultivator, if he really fell to the ground, he would most likely die. The inexplicable power that shrouded his body had unknowingly disappeared. Lu Yi could clearly feel that the power had turned into a seal that entered his body, causing his spiritual energy to stagnate. He was getting closer and closer to the ground, and his speed was getting faster and faster. His ears were filled with the whistling of the wind. Many thoughts flashed through his mind as he tried to find a way out of this situation. One thing was for sure, the reason why he inexplicably came to such an unfamiliar place was the work of the 9 continents Tianji. It was very likely that Tianji sent him here to do something. Since that was the case, Tianji would not leave him with no way out. The inexplicable power that shrouded his body was like a protection, a barrier, a cover. What was Tianji hiding? There were also many meteorites that fell with him. This did not seem like a coincidence, but more like a trick to confuse him. At this moment of life and death, Lu Ye's mind was unprecedentedly clear, and he quickly came to an uncertain conclusion. Tianji sent him here, but was afraid that someone would discover him, so he sent many meteorites to fall with him as a trick to confuse him, and sealed his power, probably because he was afraid that his aura would leak out. But if that was the case, then he would suffer. Turning his head to look around, Yang Kai found that the closest meteorite to him was a few hundred meters away. If he could reach that meteorite, he could borrow its momentum to slow down his fall, but in his current state, he couldn't do so. As he got closer and closer to the ground, Lu Yi gritted his teeth and looked down, hoping to find a place with water. If that was the case, he might be able to survive. But as far as the eye could see, there was only a dense forest below, and there was no place to store water. He could only take it head-on. His body was strong, and if he was lucky, he might not die. Just as he was thinking about this, the sealing power in his body loosened slightly, and the frozen spiritual energy began to flow. Although it circulated very slowly, it was still a hope for survival. He hurriedly channeled his spirit energy, wanting to fly, but he was unable to do so. At this moment, his cultivation had been suppressed to the third-order spirit stream realm, so he couldn't fly at all. Seeing that he was only a few hundred feet away from the ground, Lu Yi hurriedly squeezed out the spirit energy in his body to construct the flying wing spirit tattoo on his back. With a crash, a pair of fiery red wings spread out. However, in the next instant, the wings collapsed and turned into specks of starlight. A third-order spirit stream realm cultivation wasn't enough to maintain the soaring wing spirit rune. But in that instant, Lu Ye's falling speed was greatly reduced. Almost at the same time as the wings dissipated, his body landed heavily on the ground. His entire body ached from the fall. Boom, boom, boom. Violent sounds came from all directions, wrapping up waves of heat waves. It was those meteorites that fell with him, smashing the earth, shaking the mountains, and startling the birds. Lu Yi lay on the ground, bleeding from his mouth and nose, unable to get up. Sure enough, Heaven's secret had left him a way out, but being suppressed to the third-order spirit stream realm made him suffer a lot. With a thought, Lu Yi examined his body. His injuries weren't serious, and fortunately, he had reacted quickly at the last moment. Sensing that something was wrong, he had immediately constructed the soaring wing spirit tattoo. Otherwise, this trip would have boded ill. What made Lu Yi even more happy was that although his cultivation had been suppressed by that inexplicable force, he could still use his divine sense. This was more or less good news. After lying quietly on the ground for a moment, Lu Yi got up. This was not a place to stay for long. No matter why Heaven's Secret had sent him here or what he wanted him to do, it could be seen from Heaven's Secret's previous response that this was not a good place. Otherwise, there would be no need to go through so much trouble. When he, Ing Wu Ji, and the others were sent to the Peerless Continent, they had been directly teleported there. There hadn't been so much trouble. This world must be extremely dangerous. The commotion caused by the meteorites falling should have attracted many creatures of this world to investigate. Lu Yi knew nothing about this world, so he naturally didn't dare to rashly expose himself. He randomly picked a direction and limped forward. He hadn't walked far when Lu Yi suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction with a puzzled expression. Using his divine sense, he vaguely sensed a vitality in that direction. This vitality gave him a very familiar feeling. After pondering for a moment, he walked in that direction. After a short while, they arrived at their destination. They saw a sturdy figure lying in a pit at first glance. Who else could it be but Dao Shisan? This guy was also here. Lu Yi suddenly remembered that when he rushed into the crack in the sky in the nameless secret realm, he vaguely heard Dao Shisan's angry roar. It seemed that Dao Shisan had chased him here and was then dragged into this place. Lu Yi didn't know what he had encountered to make him unconscious here. However, judging from the pit below him, this guy had fallen directly, which was why he had created a pit in the ground. No wonder he had the physique of a divine sea realm cultivator. He hadn't died from the fall. Looking at the unconscious Dao Shisan, Lu Yi was suddenly overjoyed. It was probably an accident that Dao Shisan was dragged into this place. However, since Tianji had the means to send him here, he should have the means to exclude Dao Shisan. However, Dao Shisan still followed him here. In other words, Tianji had tacitly allowed this. From the looks of it, he wasn't alone. Jiuzhou Tianji had sent over a helper. Under normal circumstances, Lu Yi couldn't do anything to Dao Shisan. His cultivation was weaker than Dao Shisan's, so what could he do? However, an unconscious Dao Shisan was a different story. Lu Yi hurried forward and kicked Dao Shisan. He wanted to make sure that Dao Shisan was unconscious and also to take revenge for that punch. Dao Shisan didn't move at all. After making sure that he wouldn't wake up easily, Lu Yi raised his hand and pointed at Dao Shisan's forehead, activating the soul control rune. Right now, Dao Shisan's soul defense was at its weakest. If Lu Yi could successfully control his soul, he would be able to enslave Dao Shisan. In a completely unfamiliar world like this, a helper like Dao Shisan would undoubtedly be of great help. Lu Yi's anticipation quickly turned into disappointment. He felt as if he had crashed into an iron wall again. Although it wasn't as serious as before, Lu Yi couldn't break through Dao Shisan's soul defense at will even though he was unconscious. Lu Yi didn't dare to delay. He quickly took out a drop of soul water and drank it to replenish his soul power. He tried a second time. There was still no effect. Instead, Dao 13 let out a muffled groan, and a pained expression appeared on his face. Lu Yi felt that if this continued, Dao Shisan would be awakened. Once he woke up, it would be difficult to enslave him with the soul control rune. If it weren't for the special circumstances, Dao Shisan wouldn't have fallen unconscious so easily. Lu Yi made a decision. He took out the deity vanquishing sword from his storage space. When Lu Yi tried to enslave Dao Shisan, he had thought of using the deity vanquishing sword. However, after careful consideration, he decided against it. If he used it, Dao Shisan would definitely be angered. When that happened, Dao Shisan would definitely beat him up. Now was the best time to use the deity vanquishing sword. Lu Yi activated his thin spiritual power and poured it into the deity vanquishing sword. Under normal circumstances, using this treasure would be a piece of cake. However, Lu Yi's cultivation was suppressed too much. He had to take it slow. Unfortunately, time was of the essence. After 30 breaths, Lu Yi felt that it was about time. He aimed the small sword at Dao Shisan's head. The palm-sized deity vanquishing sword didn't even pierce Dao Shisan's skin. However, a spiritual aura flashed from the sword and disappeared into Dao Shisan's forehead. Even though he was unconscious, Dao Shisan immediately revealed a pained expression. He suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked like an angry bull. It was also at this moment that Lu Yi urged his spiritual force on him. Unlike the previous times, Lu Yi didn't feel any resistance this time. His spiritual will easily broke through Dao Shisan's soul defense and branded the soul control rune into his soul. Dao Shisan's expression became even more pained. He growled as if he wanted to resist, but he couldn't. After a while, Lu Yi retracted his spiritual will with a slightly pale face. He gasped for breath and looked at Dao Shisan in front of him. The soul control rune was successfully constructed. He could clearly feel that there was a mysterious connection between him and Dao Shisan. This connection was similar to the one between him and Hu Pe, but Lu Yi had more absolute control over it. Perhaps it was because his soul was torn apart by the deity vanquishing sword, but Dao Shisan shook his head vigorously. The light in his eyes became dimmer. His brain wasn't very bright to begin with, so he looked even more foolish now. Lu Yi took out another drop of soul water and dripped it into his mouth. The pained expression on Dao Shisan's face quickly eased. The dimness in his eyes also slowly dissipated. "Let's go," Lu Yi said. He turned around and ran in a certain direction. Dao Shisan got up from the ground and followed closely behind. While running, Lu Yi checked Dao Shisan's situation. He soon discovered that his cultivation was also suppressed because the spiritual energy fluctuations coming from Dao Shursan's body were similar to his. They were only at the third or fourth order spirit stream realm. This made Lu Yi even more certain of his previous guess. The 9 provinces' heaven's secret seemed to be using this method to hide their existence from certain people in this world. Although his cultivation was suppressed to the spirit stream realm, Dao Shursan still had his spirit sea realm physique. What's more, he was an individual cultivator, so his physique was much stronger than Lu Ye's. So, after running for a while, Lu Yi decisively climbed onto Dao Shursan's back and let him carry him forward. Dao Shursan ran as if he was flying. After running for a long time, they came to a city-like building. There was a long line of people lining up to enter. Every pedestrian was wearing a white mask, and every gatekeeper was also wearing a mask. They each held a small wooden stick in their hands. There was a small white object wrapped around the tip of the stick. The stick reached into the mouth of every pedestrian who was about to enter and stirred. Some people nodded and let them pass, while others were directly taken away. This operation confused Lu Yi, and he didn't know what to do if he wanted to enter. "May I ask why the guards are doing this?" Lu Yi asked the pedestrians around him. He had already gotten off Dao Shursan's back and told him to hide and wait for news. The pedestrian replied, "You're not a local, right? Recently, there's been a disease that can be spread by mouth. Those who suffer from this disease will feel depressed and their cultivation will not be smooth. Wearing this mask can effectively prevent others from infecting you." In less than half a day, the two walked out of the jungle and saw a village at the edge of the forest. There seemed to be a large population in the village. Because there were many houses, Lu Yi didn't rashly enter. Instead, he checked outside the village for a long time. Using his divine sense, he found that there were about 100 families in the village, and the population was close to 1,000. What made Lu Yi happy was that the people living here were humans, and not some strange race. After his previous experience in the sealed world, how could Lu Yi not know that in this vast universe, there was more than one 9-continents world, and more than one race, the human race? However, there were some things that made Lu Yi puzzled. Because this village didn't look like much, but every family seemed to be well off and had many children. The people here seemed to be very fertile. Every family had at least 2 or 3 children, and at most 6 or 7 children. Outside the village, there was a large spirit field, planted with something similar to spirit rice. Lu Yi casually picked some and put it in his mouth to taste. The spirit energy contained in the spirit rice wasn't very rich, but if eaten over a long period of time, it could at least prolong one's life. If that was the case, there should be many people with long lives in this world. However, there were no particularly old people in the village. There were very few people over the age of 40, and most of them were in their 20s or 30s. There were quite a number of cultivators in the village, more than 100 of them. Strangely, their cultivation wasn't high, and they were all at the spirit stream realm. However, they didn't look like cultivators. They seemed to be just ordinary farmers, working in the fields like other ordinary people. Logically speaking, in such a well-established village, everyone should be at ease. However, in Lu Ye's observation, the people in the village, regardless of whether they were men or women, seemed to be in a constant state of anxiety, as if danger was about to come at any time. Even the children who didn't know much about the world rarely had the carefree smile that children should have. Lu Yi was puzzled by all these strange things. After observing for half a day, Lu Yi decided to enter the village. No matter what, he could only make contact with the native human race of this world. To Zhonli then would he have the opportunity to gather information about this world. Otherwise, if he hid in the mountains with Dao Shursan, he wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. Before appearing, Lu Yi put away the mountain plate saber and even stuffed his storage pouch into his robes. He led Dao Shursan into the village. The people working in the field saw them, but they only glanced at them a few times before ignoring them. This made Lu Yi even more confused. Logically speaking, if strangers came, they should be on guard. However, the people here didn't. They acted as if they didn't see them. On the other hand, the children who were playing at the entrance of the village saw him and Dao Shisan and ran towards the depths of the village. Some of the older children ran and shouted, "Village head, there are refugees coming." Refugees. It seemed that this world wasn't as peaceful as he thought. There must be some unknown danger weighing down on these humans like a mountain, causing them to be so uneasy. Moreover, this kind of danger could come at any time. Lu Yi couldn't figure out what kind of danger it was. Perhaps it was because the children's shouts from before had alarmed the villagers. One after another, people pushed open the door to investigate, but they didn't go near. Until a middle-aged man in his 40s came forward. Lu Yi took a closer look and found that he was also a cultivator. However, he didn't use any spiritual energy, so Lu Yi couldn't determine his realm. The middle-aged man should be the village head. Although he was a cultivator, he was dressed like a farmer. Lu Yi was puzzled. In the 9 prefectures, anyone who could cultivate would not work in the fields. This was because every sect and clan would shelter a large number of mortals. The mortals could provide all the worldly items that the sect needed. However, in this unknown world, it seemed to be a common occurrence. The village head had a miserable expression. Lu Yi didn't know what he had encountered, but his eyes were red. It seemed that he hadn't rested well. He looked at Lu Yi from head to toe, then looked at Dao Shisan behind him. Lu Yi nodded wordlessly. His brows were tightly knitted, and he looked like he had suffered a great deal. 2022, 6-9. He didn't have the slightest understanding of this world, so he naturally adhered to the principle of speaking less and making fewer mistakes. If the village head mistakenly thought that he was a refugee, then he would just treat him as one. Since he was a refugee, it was normal for him to have an expression of grief and indignation. "Do you have a cultivation?" the village head asked again. Lu Yi nodded again and pushed his spiritual energy, revealing the pitiful fluctuations of a third-order spirit stream realm cultivator. The village head sighed. "You're lucky. Since you're here, stay." "Well, whether it's a blessing or a curse, it depends on your own fate." Saying so, he beckoned to Lu Yi. Lu Yi followed along with Dao Shisan. Not long after, under the guidance of the village head, the 3 of them arrived in front of a small courtyard. This is the village's inspection point. There are all kinds of professional masters here. Whether there's electricity or infectious diseases, you can tell with a single touch. Don't ask me why I'm not afraid of a foreigner like you. It's because I'm already sick. The village head's words were so shocking that Lu Yi hurriedly stepped aside. "Are you polite?" Chapter 1006. The village was filled with small courtyards. Every house was like this, and they weren't close to each other, with some distance between them. As far as the living environment was concerned, it was undoubtedly very good. "You will live here from now on. It's your first day here, so you too should rest first," the village chief ordered. "Many thanks, village chief." Lu Yi thanked him. The village chief nodded and turned to leave. Lu Yi watched him leave before leading Dao Shisan into the courtyard. He didn't expect to be assigned a place to live as soon as he arrived. But as soon as he stepped into the courtyard, Lu Yi frowned. The courtyard was in a mess, and there were a lot of bloodstains on the ground that hadn't dried yet. Obviously, someone had cleaned it up and settled it down. After a while, Lu Yi led Dao 13 out of the courtyard. He was going to talk to the village chief and see if he could get some information. But when he walked out of the courtyard, he found that the whole village was quiet. Even the children who were playing outside were gone. Every house was closed. Lu Yi looked up at the sky. The sun hadn't set yet. He was speechless for a moment. He didn't know what the villagers were hiding from. Walking forward, he came to a courtyard 1,000 meters away. He saw the village chief enter this courtyard before, so this should be the village chief's residence. The door of the small courtyard was closed. Lu Yi raised his hand and knocked on the door. There was a commotion in the house. There were faint screams of children, but their mouths were quickly covered. Then, the village chief's trembling voice sounded. And judging from the scattered bloodstains, it wasn't just one person who died here. There were at least 5 or 6 people. When the village chief assigned this small courtyard to Lu Yi, he was still wondering where the original owner of this courtyard had gone. Now he understood. The original owner of this courtyard must have met with an accident, and the whole family must have died. Looking at the extent of the dried bloodstains, it should have happened in the last 2 days. Lu Yi was even more puzzled. What kind of danger was hidden in this seemingly prosperous village? Or perhaps, the villagers themselves were a danger? If that was the case, Lu Yi wouldn't be afraid. Although he and Tao 13's cultivation had been suppressed to the third-order spirit stream realm, their divine senses were still intact. Tao 13 also had a spirit sea realm physique, so even a true lake realm cultivator wouldn't be able to do anything to them. If the people of such a village really wanted to harm them, they were bound to hit an iron plate. Together with Dao Shirlan, they cleaned up the messy house. "Chief, it's me," said Lu Yi. "Who are you?" "The one who fled here today." As soon as Lu Ye's voice fell, a long exhalation came from the house. There were a dozen people in this team, all of whom were cultivators in Guangbai. However, all of them were at the 5th stage of the spirit stream realm, with the highest being 5th Brother Zhang. The others in the team were silent. Their expressions were dignified, as if hunting in the mountains was a dangerous task. Only 5th Brother Zhang, who was the team leader, took care of the newcomer Lu Yi and said a few words to him. "It's the 100 gathering day in the village. In 5 days, gather at the entrance of the village as usual." "Understood." Lu Yi nodded. There were still many beasts in the mountains. Occasionally, there would be some weak monster beasts. The team's hunt went smoothly. By the afternoon, they returned with a full load. During this time, Lu Yi secretly warned Dao Shirsan not to be too eye-catching. After all, he was only at the 3rd stage of the spirit stream realm. If he suddenly burst out with the strength of a spirit sea realm cultivator, it would be too shocking. Before the sun set, everyone returned with big and small. Bai Wu returned to the village. The village chief was waiting at the entrance. When he saw the return of the team, he finally showed a smile, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. The other teams also returned one after another. Soon, the entrance of the village was filled with all kinds of beasts. The village chief made the decision to distribute the meat. Lu Yi and Dao Shirsan also received more than 20 kilograms of meat. They carried the meat back to their residence. Dao Shirsan directly set up a bonfire in the courtyard to roast the meat. Lu Yi lay in a wooden armchair nearby, lost in thought. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Lu Yi looked up and saw the village chief carrying a bag in his hand. Lu Yi only needed to scan it with his divine sense to know that it contained the spirit rice grown in the village. It seemed that the two of them had worked hard today, so they had a harvest. The village chief handed the spirit rice to Lu Yi and left. The sun was about to set again. Every time this happened, the lively village would become empty. Lu Yi turned to look and saw Dao 13 staring at the barbecued meat without blinking. He walked forward, took a piece of roasted beast meat, and ate it in big bites. Dao Shirsan looked on helplessly. If it was before, he would have punched Lu Yi. However, now that Lu Yi had planted the soul manipulation divine rune, he did not dare to be rash. He had no choice but to roast the rest of the meat on the bonfire. Lu Yi leisurely ate the meat. He had to admit that although Dao Shirsan was stupid, he was quite good at roasting meat. It tasted delicious. As he was eating, his expression suddenly changed. He sat up straight and sensed his own body. He did not know if it was an illusion, but he clearly felt that the restrictive force in his body was dissipating faster. Then, he watched as Lu Yi grabbed the meat that wasn't fully cooked and began to gorge himself on it. Lu Yi finished it in just a short while. Looking at the empty roasting rack, Dao Shirsan frowned. He did not know what had gone wrong. Lu Yi, on the other hand, was overjoyed because he realized that it was as he thought. Eating meat could accelerate the dissipation of the restrictive force. He immediately took out a large amount of meat from his storage bag. Because he was raising Hupa, in addition to his own desire for good food, he always kept a lot of beast meat in his storage pouch all year round. The quality of the meat was undoubtedly much better than the meat he hunted during the day. Since eating meat could accelerate the dissipation of the restrictive force, things were much easier. Seeing Lu Yi take out so much meat, Dao Shirsan's frown immediately relaxed. He helped Lu Yi and roasted the meat on the bonfire. The restrictive force from the 9 provinces' heaven's secret would slowly dissipate on its own. However, it was very slow. Lu Yi did not know how long it would take for him to recover his cultivation base. For the past 2 days, he had been thinking about how to dissolve the restrictive force, but he had no idea. Until now. He hurriedly finished the rest of the beast meat in his hand and activated the gluttonous meal. Immediately, a buzzing sound came from his stomach. Under his perception, his stomach seemed to have turned into a millstone, grinding the beast meat that he ate. The power of imprisonment dissipated a little faster. However, it quickly returned to normal. The essence of the meat had been used up. Eating meat could accelerate the dissipation of the restrictive force? Lu Yi did not know why, but based on his current experience, it seemed to be the case. He turned his head and looked at the other piece of meat roasting on the bonfire. Dao Shisan's body tensed up. He looked up and met Lu Ye's gaze. He had a bad feeling. Seeing Lu Yi take out so much meat, Dao Shisan's frown immediately relaxed. He helped Lu Yi and roasted the meat on the bonfire. A moment later, the master and servant both ate until their mouths were covered in oil. However, Lu Ye's brows furrowed. This time, the restrictive force in his body did not react at all. When he ate the meat just now, the restrictive force dissipated faster. Why was there no reaction this time? He did not believe it and ate a few more pieces, but there was still no reaction. He did not understand. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.